Let me ask you something. What would you do if you saw someone about to die, but the only way to save them was to make them hate you? That's the choice 6-year-old Laura faced when she walked into Raymond Jones's birthday gala. You ain't nothing but a selfish man hiding behind your money. The insult froze the entire Manhattan Foundation Hall. Guests gasped. Security moved in. Raymond, the 39-year-old billionaire, glared at the little girl in disbelief. But Laura didn't flinch. Because she knew something no one else did. That glass of wine in his hand? It was poisoned. And she had seconds to stop him from drinking it. What did you just say to me? His voice carried the weight of boardrooms and power, the disbelief of a man who controlled everything. Welcome back, my beautiful family. Before we begin, please click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. Laura lifted her chin higher, her voice trembling but loud. You don't care about people like us. My mama's sick and you drink wine that costs more than our rent. You act like some hero, but you ain't. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in emerald pearls clutched her necklace. This is outrageous. A senator muttered to his aide. Who let a child in here? Sandra, Raymond's fiancée, her diamond ring catching the light, clutched his arm with theatrical urgency. Raymond, don't waste your breath on this nonsense. Security, remove her immediately. Raymond's head of protection stepped forward. Sir, let's move you away from her. This could be a setup. But Raymond raised his hand, his eyes locked on Laura. His jaw tightened. His cheeks burned. Little girl, do you have any idea who you're speaking to? This isn't the place for your tantrums. Go back to your mother. Laura's voice cracked, but she shouted louder so every ear in the hall could hear. You're not listening. That drink, it's not safe. Raymond shook his head, exhaling sharply through his nose. Ridiculous. What could a child possibly know about imported Bordeaux? His tone was sharp, dismissive, but deep in his chest, a flicker of unease stirred. Before anyone could move, Laura darted forward. Her small shoe struck the stem of his wine glass. The crystal slipped from Raymond's hand, spinning through the air before shattering against the marble floor. Red wine spread in a dark pool across the white stone. What the hell do you think you're doing? Raymond roared, his voice booming across the hall. The guests gasped, a chorus of shock echoing beneath the chandeliers. Sandra shrieked. She's insane. 2 guards rushed toward Laura. She kicked and struggled, crying. Don't let him drink it. Please don't let him drink it. Before Raymond could order her dragged away, a sharp bark cut through the chaos. A small terrier, loose from backstage, scampered across the floor toward the spilled wine. Its nose twitched. In a heartbeat, the dog lapped at the crimson liquid. Seconds later, the terrier convulsed. Foam spilled from its mouth. The room fell silent as the animal collapsed at Raymond's polished shoes. That little dog never stood a chance. And yet, its sacrifice revealed the truth no one wanted to see. If you felt the weight of that moment, if your heart went out to the child and the dog, drop a comment below. Don't forget to like this story and subscribe to the channel for more powerful tales that remind us why truth and courage matter. Raymond's face went white. He staggered back a step, his voice dropping low, heavy with dread. Dear God, it was poisoned. His bodyguard seized his arm firmly. Sir, don't touch anything. Stay back. Raymond's eyes swept from the lifeless dog to the trembling little girl still in the guard's hold. His voice was hollow now, stripped of certainty. You knew. Laura's tearful voice cracked as she answered. It was meant for you. And in that instant, Raymond Jones, the man who thought he owned every room he entered, felt his power slip away, replaced by fear that chilled him to the bone. Raymond's heart hammered in his chest, louder than the gasps filling the grand hall. The shattered glass lay at his feet. Crimson wine spread like a bloodstain on white marble. The little terrier's body lay still, a smear of foam at its mouth, proof enough that this was no accident. For a moment, the billionaire who had stood at podiums before presidents and kings felt utterly stripped bare. He could not speak. He could not even breathe. Sir, step back. His bodyguard's voice barked with military precision, his broad frame moving between Raymond and the scene. One hand pushed him behind. The other motioned sharply to the guards still holding Laura. "Don't let anyone touch that floor. Nobody." Voices erupted at once. "Good Lord, that poor animal," cried an elderly woman in a sequined shawl. "Poison," a senator murmured, his face pale. Someone else hissed, "This is going to ruin everything." Guests stumbled back, pressing napkins to their mouths as if they too might be struck down. Sandra's cry cut over the noise. "This child is dangerous. She's making a scene." She attacked Raymond. She clung to his arm, but Raymond pulled it free, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the stain on the floor. The warmth of alcohol should have risen from it. Yet he thought he detected something sharper beneath, something foul. Anna twisted in the guard's grip, her small face wet with tears. But her voice rose above the crowd. "I told you. I saw the man. I saw the bottle with the blue mark. It was for him." She jerked her chin toward Raymond, her little chest heaving. "Silence her," the event manager snapped, her polished composure fraying. "Get her out of here before the press sees." Her clipboard shook in her hand, and for the first time, her voice betrayed fear. Raymond's eyes darted to the cameras lining the hall. Flashes popped, catching his every move, freezing the moment forever. He felt their hunger, reporters pressing closer, microphones thrust like spears. If he dismissed this as a child's tantrum and it was true, his reputation would die with him. If he admitted it, the gala would collapse in scandal. But then he looked again at the terrier, its body curled unnaturally still, and the decision became less about reputation and more about survival. His voice, usually calm and measured, cut across the hall with steel. "No one leaves." The words dropped like stone into water. A hush fell, broken only by whispers. His bodyguard's face tightened in approval. "You heard him," he barked at the guards by the doors. "Seal the exits. Nobody out." "What?" A congressman puffed up in outrage. "You can't hold us like prisoners. This is insane." Sandra shrieked, her eyes darting nervously. "Raymond." Raymond turned, his face pale but resolute. "Someone here just tried to kill me. You will wait until security investigates." His voice carried, leaving no room for debate. Laura's small body trembled in the guard's grip, but her dark eyes never left his. For the first time, Raymond truly saw her, not just a disruptive child, but the only person who had spoken before disaster struck. "Let her go," he said quietly. "Sir," one guard hesitated. "I said let her go." Hands released her shoulders. Laura stumbled forward, her eyes wide, a mixture of fear and stubborn courage. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing her tears. Raymond bent slightly, ignoring the whispers around him. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice low, meant only for her. Laura swallowed hard. "I saw him. A man gave money to the wine man. He marked the bottle with blue. I knew it wasn't right." The billionaire's stomach twisted. He had built an empire on numbers and contracts, but here was a child who had seen what no one else had. His voice faltered. "And you chose to embarrass me, to insult me, just to stop me from drinking it?" Her lip quivered. "If I didn't, you'd be dead." The words pierced deeper than any insult. Raymond straightened, his jaw set. "Find that bottle," he ordered his head of security. "The one with the blue mark." "Yes, sir." Within moments, 2 security men disappeared behind the bar. Guests shifted uneasily, whispering. Their glittering finery suddenly felt ridiculous against the stench of fear. Sandra forced a brittle laugh. "This is madness, Raymond. It was just spoiled wine. Nothing more. This little brat, she's making you look foolish." Raymond turned on her, his voice icy. "Enough. A dog just died at my feet." His words silenced her. But how had it come to this? How had a child, a stranger, known what no one else in that glittering hall had seen? To understand that, you must go back to the beginning of the evening, when the Manhattan Foundation Hall glowed with promise, and Raymond Jones believed himself untouchable. The silence after Raymond's command hung in the air like smoke. Then chaos erupted. "Seal the exits." Raymond's head of security barked into his earpiece, his voice cutting through the shocked murmurs. "No one leaves. I repeat, no one leaves this building. The heavy mahogany doors at the hall's entrance swung shut with a resonant boom. Four guards positioned themselves in front of the exits, hands clasped behind their backs, faces impassive. The metallic click of locks engaging echoed through the chamber. What? A red-faced congressman pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with indignation. You can't be serious. I have a meeting with the governor in an hour. This is unlawful detention. My daughter's recital starts in 30 minutes, a woman in a sapphire gown cried out, her voce rising with panic. You have no right. Someone just tried to murder me in front of 200 witnesses, Raymond cut in, his voice sharp as broken glass. You'll forgive me if I don't prioritize your evening plans. The crowd erupted in overlapping voices, some shouting protests, others whispering frantically into their phones. A senator's aide attempted to push past a guard and was firmly, but politely, redirected back into the crowd. The string quartet had stopped playing entirely, their instruments hanging forgotten in their hands. Raymond's eyes swept across the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. Every face was a mask, some showing outrage, others fear, still others carefully cultivated neutrality. Any one of them could be complicit. Any one of them could have wanted him dead. The thought made his chest tighten. This is absolutely insane. Sandra's voice pierced through the noise. She stood beside him, her diamond necklace catching the chandelier light as she gestured dramatically. Raymond, you're overreacting. Look at what you're doing, you're creating a scandal. A scandal. Raymond turned to her slowly. Sandra, a dog just died from drinking wine meant for me. I'd say the scandal already exists. It was probably spoiled, she insisted, her voice taking on a brittle edge. Wine can ferment improperly, develop bacteria. It happens all the time. This is a tragedy, yes, but you're treating it like attempted murder? Raymond finished coldly. Because that's exactly what it is. Sandra's perfectly made-up face tightened. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Was it fear? Anger? Before Raymond could read it, she turned away, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. You're embarrassing yourself, she whispered. In front of everyone who matters. Camera flashes exploded across the room like lightning. Raymond's head snapped toward the source. A cluster of journalists had pushed to the front of the crowd, their cameras raised, lenses trained on him like weapons. He could already see tomorrow's headlines. Billionaire's birthday bash ends in chaos. Asterisk paranoia or poison. Raymond Jones locks down gala. Asterisk. Mr. Jones. A reporter in a rumpled blazer thrust a microphone toward him. Can you confirm that you believe someone tried to poison you tonight? Mr. Jones, do you have any suspects? Is it true a child saved your life? Raymond's bodyguard stepped forward, his massive frame blocking the reporters. Back up. Now. This is an active security situation. But the damage was done. Every camera, every recording device, every phone in the room was documenting this moment. Raymond's empire had been built on carefully curated public image. Control, power, success. Now that image was crumbling in real time, broadcast to the world. And yet, as his eyes drifted back to the small lifeless body of the terrier still lying in the spreading pool of wine, he realized something. He didn't care about the headlines. He cared about being alive. His gaze found Laura. She stood a few feet away, wiping her tear-streaked face with the sleeve of her faded dress. Security had released her, but she looked small and lost among the towering adults, like a sparrow caught in a storm. Her thin shoulders shook with silent sobs, but her eyes held a fierce, stubborn determination that reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten. Courage. Raymond crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. He knelt down on one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. Up close, he could see the frayed threads at the hem of her dress, the scuffed toes of her shoes, the way her hair had been carefully braided with what little supplies she had. Laura, he said softly, using her name for the first time. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw. Can you do that? Laura's chin trembled, but she nodded. Her voice came out small, but steady. I was outside. By the kitchen door. I was looking for food. Raymond's chest tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Go on. I saw a man, Laura continued, her words coming faster now. He was wearing a fancy suit. Black. He had silver hair, like yours but more gray. He walked up to the wine man. The sommelier, Raymond corrected gently. The wine man, Laura repeated stubbornly. The one with the bottles. The man in the black suit, he took out money. Lots of it. I saw it because it was in one of those paper bands, like from the bank. He gave it to the wine man, and then he pointed to one bottle. A red one. Raymond's hands clenched. What happened then? The wine man, he looked scared, Laura said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Really scared. Like when my mama sees the rent man coming. He tried to give the money back, but the scary man grabbed his wrist. He said something I couldn't hear. Then he pulled out a little marker, like a blue pen, and he drew a tiny mark on the bottle. Right here. She pointed to an invisible spot near the base of an imaginary bottle. He said, "This one goes to Raymond Jones. Make sure he drinks it." The words hit Raymond like a physical blow. His vision blurred for a moment. Someone had known. Someone had planned this. Someone had paid to have him killed at his own birthday celebration, surrounded by the people who were supposed to be his allies, his friends. "Did you see his face?" Raymond asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. The man in the black suit. Laura's brow furrowed in concentration. It was dark. And he was far away. But... She paused, her eyes distant. He had a ring. A big one. Gold, with a red stone. It was on his right hand. A gold ring with a red stone. Raymond's mind raced through the guest list, through his business associates, his investors, his rivals. How many men in this room wore rings like that? 10? 20? The description was too vague, too common among wealthy men who liked to display their success. Anything else? He pressed. Anything at all? Laura bit her lip, thinking hard. Then her eyes widened. His voice. It was scratchy. Like he smoked too much. And he had an accent. Not from here. Maybe from the South? Like the people in the movies. Before Raymond could respond, Sandra's sharp voice cut through the moment. "Oh, this is rich. You're taking the word of a street child over everyone else here." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Raymond, she probably made the whole thing up. Children lie. Especially when they're desperate for attention. Raymond stood slowly, his jaw set. "She saved my life, Sandra." "You don't know that," Sandra hissed, stepping closer. Her perfume, usually intoxicating, now seemed cloying, suffocating. "All you know is that a dog died. That doesn't prove anything. For all we know, she planted the poison herself to play the hero." Gasps rippled through the nearby guests. Laura's eyes went wide with shock and hurt. Raymond felt something inside him snap. "That's enough." "No, it's not enough." Sandra's voice rose, drawing more attention. "You're destroying your reputation, your business relationships, everything we've built, because of some wild story from a..." "I said that's enough." Raymond's voice boomed across the hall, silencing her mid-sentence. "If you can't see that this child risked everything to save my life, then maybe you're not the woman I thought you were." Sandra's face went white, then red. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Fine," she said, her voice venomous. "Make a fool of yourself. But when the press crucifies you tomorrow, don't say I didn't warn you." She turned on her heel and stalked toward the bar, her heels clicking against the marble like gunshots. Raymond's bodyguard appeared at his elbow. "Sir, we've begun searching the staff. The sommelier is nowhere to be found. He left his post approximately 10 minutes before the incident." A chill ran down Raymond's spine. "Find him." "We're trying, sir." But what?" The bodyguard's expression was grim. "His phone is off. His car is still in the parking garage, but he's not in the building. It's like he vanished." Raymond's hands curled into fists. The sommelier, the man who had been bribed, threatened, or both, was gone. The one person who could identify who had paid him had disappeared. "Search the wine inventory," Raymond ordered. "Find every bottle with a blue mark. I want them tested. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." "Already on it, sir." The bodyguard nodded to two uniformed staff members who were carefully examining bottles behind the bar, wearing latex gloves and handling each one like a live grenade. Around them, the gala had transformed into something surreal. Guests stood in small clusters, whispering urgently. Some were on their phones, undoubtedly calling lawyers or publicists. Others had simply claimed chairs and sat in stunned silence, their champagne flutes forgotten. The elderly woman in the sequined shawl was crying quietly into a napkin. A young couple near the windows held each other, their faces pale. Fear had infected the room like a virus, spreading from person to person. And beneath the fear was something else, suspicion. Raymond could see it in the way people looked at each other, in the spaces they maintained between bodies, in the guarded expressions on every face. One of them was a killer, or knew a killer, or had paid a killer. And until they were found, no one was safe. A security team member approached, holding a bottle carefully with gloved hands. "Sir, we found 3 bottles marked with blue. 2 were still in storage. This one." He held it up to the light. Near the base, barely visible, was a small blue dot. This one was on the service tray. It was next in line to be poured. Raymond stared at the bottle. The label read, Chateau Margaux 2000. One of his favorites. Someone had known his preferences, his habits, even his drinking schedule. This wasn't random. This was intimate. Personal. "Test it," Raymond said, his voice hollow. "Test all 3. As the security team carefully carried the bottles away, Laura tugged on Raymond's sleeve. He looked down to find her gazing up at him with those impossibly old eyes. "Mr. Raymond." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Are you gonna be okay?" The question, so simple and sincere, nearly broke him. Here was a child who had nothing, who had been sneaking around looking for food scraps, asking if he would be okay. A billionaire. A man who owned buildings and companies and more wealth than Laura would see in 10 lifetimes. Raymond knelt again, this time placing a hand gently on her small shoulder. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "But thanks to you, I have a chance to find out." Laura's face broke into a tentative smile, small but genuine. "Sir." Another security guard called out, jogging toward them. "We found something else." Raymond stood, his heart pounding. "What?" The guard held up a small bottle, the kind used for prescription medication. It was empty. This was in the staff bathroom trash. Recent. The label's been torn off, but there's residue inside. He paused, his expression grave. "It smells like almonds." Cyanide. The room spun. Raymond gripped the edge of a nearby table to steady himself. Cyanide. Quick, deadly, nearly impossible to detect before it was too late. If Laura hadn't stopped him, if that wine had touched his lips, he would have had minutes, maybe seconds. He would be dead. The reality of it crashed over him like a wave. Dead at 39. Dead in front of everyone. Dead before he could fix his mistakes, make amends, build something that mattered beyond money and power. Dead. Raymond. Laura's small hand slipped into his. "You're shaking." He was. His entire body trembled with delayed shock, with the weight of his own mortality. He squeezed Laura's hand gently, drawing strength from her small, steady presence. "I'm okay," he managed. "I'm okay because of you." Around them, the investigation continued. Security questioned guests. The remaining wine was secured. Statements were taken. But through it all, Raymond kept one eye on the crowd, watching faces, reading expressions, searching for the crack in someone's mask. Because somewhere in this glittering hall, surrounded by crystal and gold and the trappings of civilization, was someone who wanted him dead badly enough to poison him in front of 200 witnesses. And they were still here. Still watching. Still waiting. The Manhattan Foundation Hall had transformed into a pressure cooker of paranoia and speculation. What had been a celebration of wealth and influence now felt like a gilded cage, and everyone trapped inside knew it. In the corners of the room, clusters of guests huddled together like conspirators, their voices low and urgent. Raymond could hear fragments of their conversations, each whisper another crack in the foundation of trust. "Heard he's been shorting the market against the Hendersons. That deal in Singapore fell through last month. Cost someone millions. Never forgave him for the hostile takeover." Near the western wall, a group of older men in tuxedos stood with brandy glasses, their faces grave. Senator Mitchell, a silver-haired man Raymond had donated to for 3 election cycles, spoke just loud enough to be heard. A man doesn't get to where Raymond is without making enemies. The question is, which enemy finally decided to act? His companion, a real estate mogul named Dutch, nodded slowly. I've counted at least 15 people in this room who've lost money because of him. And that's just the ones I know about. Raymond's jaw clenched. He built his empire through calculated risks and hard negotiations. Yes, some people lost when he won. That was business. But to hear it spoken aloud, to have his professional decisions dissected as potential motives for murder, made his skin crawl. Across the room, a different conversation was taking place. 3 women in evening gowns, wives of executives Raymond had worked with, stood near the champagne fountain, their eyes darting toward Laura. That poor child, one of them said, her voice dripping with theatrical sympathy. To be used like this. It's despicable. Used? Another woman questioned, her penciled eyebrows raised. What do you mean? Oh please. A street child just happens to witness a poisoning plot? Just happens to be in the right place at the right time to save Raymond Jones. The first woman shook her head. Someone put her up to this. Someone who wants to create chaos, destroy Raymond's reputation. Or, the third woman added quietly, maybe she's telling the truth. In my experience, darling, the truth is rarely that convenient. Laura sat on a velvet bench near the grand staircase, her small legs dangling above the floor. She'd drawn her knees up to her chest, arms wrapped around them protectively. Raymond watched as guests approached her, some with genuine concern, others with thinly veiled skepticism. An elderly woman in pearls bent down, offering Laura a napkin with petit fours. You must be hungry, dear. But before Laura could respond, a younger man in a sharp suit intercepted. Careful, Mrs. Chun. For all we know, the child could be part of the scheme. A distraction while the real crime unfolds. Mrs. Chun pulled back, clutching her napkin. The petit fours remained uneaten. Laura's eyes found Raymond's across the room. In them, he saw something that made his chest ache, resignation. As if she'd expected this all along. As if being doubted, dismissed, and suspected was just another part of her daily existence. Sandra materialized at Raymond's elbow like a ghost. Her perfume was overwhelming, her voice syrupy with false concern. Raymond, darling, we need to talk. Privately. Not now, Sandra. Yes, now. She gripped his arm, her manicured nails digging through his suit jacket. Before you make this worse than it already is. Raymond allowed himself to be pulled toward a quiet alcove near the east entrance, away from the main crowd. Sandra positioned herself so her back was to the room, her body blocking their conversation from prying eyes. What? Raymond asked, his patience wearing thin. Sandra's expression shifted, the theatrical concern melting away to reveal something harder underneath. That child. Laura. Have you considered that this entire thing might be a setup? A setup? Raymond repeated slowly. Sandra, she saved my life. Did she? Sandra's eyes narrowed. Or did she create the situation in the first place? Think about it, Raymond. A poor child conveniently placed to witness a crime, creates a massive scene, makes you look paranoid and unstable in front of the press. A dog died, Sandra. Dogs can be sacrificed. She said it so casually, so coldly, that Raymond actually took a step back. Sandra didn't seem to notice. Someone could have paid her, coached her. Your rivals would love nothing more than to see you lose credibility. Marcus Chun has been trying to oust you from the board for months. The Westbrook Group lost millions on the merger you blocked. Any of them could have. Enough. Raymond's voice was ice. A child is not a pawn in some corporate conspiracy. The poison was real. The threat was real. Sandra's laugh was bitter. You've gotten soft, Raymond. That's your problem. You see a crying child and suddenly you forget that everyone has an angle. Everyone wants something. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. That little girl is playing you. And when this all falls apart, when the media tears you to shreds and your investors lose faith, don't say I didn't warn you. Before Raymond could respond, a commotion erupted near the bar. His head of security was shouting orders, and 2 guards were rushing toward the service entrance, their hands on their weapons. Raymond broke away from Sandra and pushed through the crowd. "What's happening?" His bodyguard turned, his face grim. "We've got a problem, sir. A big one." They moved quickly through a service corridor that connected to the catering area. The kitchen staff had been sequestered here, 20 people in white uniforms and aprons, all looking terrified. At the far end, 2 security guards held a young waiter by his arms. The man, barely 25, with brown hair and a name tag that read Josh, was trembling so violently that Raymond could see it from across the room. "What did you find?" Raymond asked. One of the guards held up a white serving jacket. He was trying to sneak out through the loading dock. When we stopped him, he threw this into a dumpster. The guard turned the jacket around, revealing dark stains on the collar and sleeves. "Smells like wine, sir. And something else. Something chemical." Raymond's blood ran cold. He approached the waiter slowly, deliberately. The young man wouldn't meet his eyes. "What's your name?" Raymond asked, keeping his voice level. Josh. Josh Martinez." "Josh, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you see something tonight?" Josh's face crumpled. Tears spilled down his cheeks. "I didn't. I couldn't. Please, I have a family. I have." "Josh." Raymond's voice was firm but not unkind. "Someone tried to kill me. If you know something, you need to speak now." The waiter's breath came in short gasps, like a trapped animal. I saw him. The man. The one who gave the money." The room went silent. Every eye was on Josh. "Where?" Raymond pressed. "Where did you see him?" "In the wine room. About an hour before service started." Josh's words tumbled out faster now, desperate. "I was getting champagne flutes from storage, and I heard voices. The sommelier, Mr. Pascal, he was arguing with someone. I couldn't see who at first, but I heard Mr. Pascal say, 'I can't do this. I won't.' And then the other man said." Josh swallowed hard. He said, "Then your daughter at St. Mary's Academy won't have a father anymore." Gasps echoed through the small space. Someone behind Raymond muttered a prayer. "What happened then?" Raymond asked. Mr. Pascal started crying. Begging. The man said he just had to mark 1 bottle. Just 1. That no one would know. That he'd be paid enough to take his daughter and disappear. Josh wiped his face with his sleeve. Mr. Pascal took the money. And the man gave him the marker. A blue one. "Did you see the man's face?" Josh shook his head frantically. "No. I swear no. I stayed hidden. I was scared. His voice broke. "I should have said something. I should have done something, but I was scared." Raymond studied him. The fear in Josh's eyes was genuine. The guilt even more so. "Why were you running?" "Because." Josh's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Because after the dog died, I saw him again. The man from the wine room. He was standing in the crowd, watching everything. And when our eyes met..." Josh shuddered. He smiled. Like he was daring me to say something. Like he was reminding me what happened to people who talked. "Is he still here?" Raymond demanded. "In this building?" "I don't know. I just knew I had to get out. I have a wife. We just had a baby." Josh was sobbing now. "Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know someone would actually die." Raymond's bodyguard stepped forward. "Can you describe him? Anything at all?" Josh squeezed his eyes shut, concentrating. "Tall. White. Maybe 50? 60? Gray hair. Clean shaven. Expensive suit, black or dark blue. And he had..." Josh's eyes snapped open. "A ring. A gold ring with a red stone. Ruby, I think. On his right hand." The description matched what Laura had seen. The same man. The same ring. "Anything else?" the bodyguard pressed. His voice, Josh said quietly. It was rough. Like he'd been smoking for years. And he had an accent. Southern, maybe? Or Texan? Raymond's mind raced through the guest list again. Gray hair, Southern accent, ruby ring. There were at least a dozen men who could fit that description, maybe more. The details were specific enough to be real, but vague enough to implicate multiple people. Whoever had planned this had been smart. Very smart. Take him to a secure room, Raymond ordered. Get a full statement. And get a sketch artist here. I want a composite drawing based on both his and Laura's descriptions. As Josh was led away, still trembling, still apologizing, Raymond's head of security pulled him aside. Sir, there's something else you need to see. They returned to the main hall, where a security team had lined up 15 wine bottles on a white-clothed table. All of them were expensive vintages. All of them bore the faint blue mark near the base. Raymond felt sick. 15. 15 confirmed so far, his bodyguard corrected. We're still searching. He picked up one bottle carefully, turning it in the light. They're not random, sir. Each one is a wine you've publicly stated you prefer. The Margaux, the Petrus, the Lafite. Whoever did this knew your tastes intimately. How is that possible? Raymond breathed. You've done interviews. Published articles in wine magazines about your collection. The bodyguard set the bottle down. Your preferences are public knowledge to anyone who cared to look. But that wasn't what chilled Raymond to his core. It wasn't the number of bottles or even the careful selection. It was the implication. This wasn't about killing Raymond Jones in a single moment. This was about making sure he didn't survive the night. If he'd avoided the first glass, there would have been a second, a third, a fourth. Someone hadn't just wanted him dead. They'd wanted to guarantee it. The killer's still here, Raymond said aloud, the words tasting like ash. They have to be. They'd want to watch. To make sure it worked. His bodyguard nodded grimly. We're reviewing security footage now. But with 200 guests. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Finding one killer among 200 wealthy, influential people, many of whom had reasons to want Raymond gone, would be like finding a specific needle in a pile of needles. Raymond's eyes scanned the crowd. Every face was a potential threat. The senator near the windows who'd lost a deal last year. The investment banker who'd been passed over for a partnership. The rival CEO who'd sworn revenge after a merger fell through. Even friends seemed suspect now. How many of them smiled to his face while cursing his name in private? His gaze found Sandra, standing near the bar with a glass of untouched champagne. She was watching him with an unreadable expression. When their eyes met, she didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just stared. Then his eyes shifted to Laura. She'd moved from the bench and now sat on the floor near the grand staircase, her back against the wall. She'd pulled her knees up again, making herself as small as possible. But her eyes were alert, scanning the room just as Raymond was. A 6-year-old child, reading a room full of adults for signs of danger. It broke something in Raymond's chest. He crossed the room toward her, ignoring the whispers that followed him. When he reached Laura, he sat down on the floor beside her, something he never would have done an hour ago, in his expensive suit, in front of all these people. But an hour ago, he'd thought he was untouchable. Invincible. An hour ago, he'd been wrong about everything. You doing okay? He asked quietly. Laura shrugged, a gesture too world-weary for someone so young. People think I'm lying. Some people always think children lie, Raymond said. Especially when those children tell uncomfortable truths. Do you think I'm lying? Raymond looked at her, really looked at her. At the dirt under her fingernails, the patches on her dress, the hunger that still lingered in her eyes despite the food that had been offered. This was a child who'd risked everything to save a stranger. Who'd made herself a target to prevent a murder. No, he said firmly. I don't think you're lying. I think you're the bravest person in this room. Laura's eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them back. I'm scared, Mr. Raymond. Me too, he admitted. They sat in silence for a moment, two people from completely different worlds, united by a shared truth. Someone in this glittering hall was a killer. And until they were found, no one, not even a billionaire, was safe. Across the room, Sandra watched them with cold eyes. And somewhere among the silk and diamonds, the champagne and chandeliers, a murderer waited. Sandra moved through the crowd like a politician at a campaign rally, her sequin gown catching the light with every calculated step. Despite the chaos, or perhaps because of it, she had transformed herself into the picture of gracious composure. Her diamond earrings swayed as she touched shoulders, squeezed hands, and whispered reassurances into the ears of anxious guests. "Everything's under control," she cooed to a cluster of nervous socialites near the hors d'oeuvres table. "You know how Raymond gets when he's stressed. He's always been dramatic." The women tittered nervously, their laughter fragile as crystal. "This will all blow over by morning," Sandra continued, her voice smooth as honey. "Some unfortunate accident with spoiled wine, a frightened child making up stories. You know how the press loves to sensationalize." She waved her hand dismissively, her engagement ring throwing prisms of light across their faces. "By tomorrow, we'll all laugh about this over brunch." But from her position on the floor beside the grand staircase, Laura watched. Her dark eyes tracked Sandra's movements with an intensity that seemed far too old for a 6-year-old. She noticed things the adults didn't, or perhaps things they chose not to see. She noticed how Sandra's smile never quite reached her eyes. How her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was looking. How she avoided looking at the spot where the terrier had died, giving it a wide berth as if proximity to death might contaminate her designer gown. Most telling of all, how Sandra hadn't once asked Raymond if he was truly okay. Hadn't held him, comforted him, or shown genuine relief that he'd survived. Instead, she worked the room, protecting his image, or perhaps her own. Raymond, still seated beside Laura, was watching Sandra too. But his view was different, filtered through years of intimacy and shared history. He saw the woman he'd planned to marry, the woman who'd stood beside him at charity galas and business dinners, who'd smiled for cameras and charmed investors. He wanted to see concern. Wanted to believe her performance was motivated by love. But doubt, once planted, grows quickly in fertile soil. "Mr. Raymond." Laura's whisper was so quiet he almost missed it. "Yes." Laura's small finger pointed discreetly toward Sandra, who was now speaking with a group of bank executives near the bar. "She's pretending." Raymond's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Laura turned to face him, her expression grave. "She's acting like everything's okay, but..." The child struggled to find the right words. "She doesn't care if you live or die. She's just worried about what people think." The words hit Raymond like a slap. He wanted to defend Sandra, to explain that people process fear differently, that not everyone shows emotion the same way. But as he watched his fiancée laugh, actually laugh, at something one of the bankers said, he couldn't find the counterargument. A dog had died. 15 bottles of poison had been found. Someone had tried to murder him in front of 200 witnesses. And Sandra was networking. "You're very observant," Raymond said quietly, not confirming or denying Laura's assessment. "I have to be," Laura replied simply. "People like me, we gotta watch everything. It's how we survive." Before Raymond could respond, Sandra's voice cut across the room, sharp enough to silence nearby conversations. "Excuse me? Excuse me." She was pushing through the crowd toward them, her gracious mask slipping. "Raymond, what are you doing? Get up off that filthy floor this instant." Raymond stood slowly, brushing off his suit pants. Laura scrambled to her feet beside him, instinctively moving closer to his leg. Sandra reached them, slightly breathless, spots of color high on her perfect cheekbones. Up close, Raymond could see the strain around her eyes, the tightness in her jaw. "Do you have any idea how this looks?" she hissed, her voice low but intense. "You're sitting on the floor like some vagrant with that child, while everyone watches. The press is having a field day." "A field day," Raymond repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Someone tried to kill me, Sandra. And you survived," she shot back. "So now you need to act like a leader, not a victim. You need to show strength, control." "She doesn't mean it," Laura said suddenly, her small voice cutting through Sandra's monologue. Sandra's head snapped toward the child, her eyes flashing. "What did you say?" Laura stood her ground, though Raymond could feel her trembling against his leg. "You don't really care that he's okay. You're just mad, 'cause he's not acting how you want." The air around them seemed to crystallize. Several nearby guests stopped mid-conversation, sensing confrontation. Sandra's laugh was brittle, almost hysterical. Oh, this is rich. Now the street urchin is a relationship counselor. She turned to Raymond, her voice rising. Are you going to let her speak to me like this? To insult me, after everything I've done for you? After all the events I've planned, the connections I've made, the image I've helped you build. The image, Raymond repeated slowly, the words tasting bitter. Is that what matters to you right now? The image. Of course it matters. Sandra's composure was fracturing, her voice climbing higher. Do you think empires are built on sentiment? On sitting on floors with orphans while your enemies circle? She gestured wildly at the room. Every person here is watching you, judging you, deciding whether you're still worth their investment. And instead of managing the situation, you're playing father figure to a lying little. Don't. Raymond's single word stopped her mid-sentence. His voice carried a warning that made even Sandra pause. Don't finish that sentence. She's lying, Raymond. Sandra's mask shattered completely, revealing raw desperation underneath. Can't you see it? This child, she's manipulating you. Making up stories about poison, about mysterious men with rings. It's all fabricated to make herself important, to get attention too. I saw the dog die, Raymond said flatly. That wasn't fabricated. Coincidence. The wine could have been spoiled, fermented wrong, contaminated during shipping. 15 bottles, Sandra. Marked with blue. Each one a wine I specifically prefer. That's not coincidence. That's systematic attempted murder. Sandra's hands flew up in exasperation. Then it's someone trying to frame someone else. Corporate espionage, a setup, anything but this ridiculous narrative you're buying into. She jabbed a finger toward Laura. And this child is either part of it or she's delusional. Either way, you're destroying your credibility by treating her like some kind of oracle. Maybe, a new voice interjected, Mr. Jones is showing humanity. Something we could all learn from. They turned to find Mrs. Chun, the elderly woman who tried to offer Laura the petit fours, standing with several other guests who'd gathered to listen. Her wrinkled face was set in disapproval as she looked at Sandra. That little girl saved Raymond's life, Mrs. Chun continued, her voice carrying despite its age. While the rest of us stood around drinking champagne, she risked everything to warn him. And instead of gratitude, you're attacking her. I'm being realistic, Sandra snapped. Someone needs to be. Or, suggested a younger woman in an emerald dress, someone needs to ask why you're so determined to discredit the child's story. The murmur of agreement rippled through the growing crowd. Sandra's eyes widened, surprise and anger flashing across her features. Excuse me. Her voice dripped with indignation. Are you actually suggesting? We're not suggesting anything, a man in a gray suit interrupted. We're observing. And what we're observing is that you seem more concerned with public relations than with your fiancé's safety. That's absurd. Is it? Mrs. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. Raymond nearly died tonight, dear. Yet you haven't once embraced him, haven't asked about his well-being, haven't shown relief. Instead, you've been. She paused delicately. Managing the narrative. Sandra's face went from red to white. How dare you? How dare any of you? She whirled to face Raymond, her eyes blazing. Are you going to let them talk to me like this? Your fiancé? The woman who stood by your side for 3 years. Raymond looked at her, really looked at her. At the perfect makeup, the designer gown, the practiced expressions. When had he stopped seeing the real person underneath? Or had there never been a real person there at all? Had their entire relationship been performance, image, strategic partnership? Answer me this, Raymond said quietly. Are you relieved I'm alive? Sandra blinked. What kind of question? Are you relieved? He pressed. Not relieved for your social standing, not relieved for the wedding we've planned, not relieved for the business connections. Are you, Sandra, as a human being, relieved that I, Raymond, didn't die tonight? The silence stretched. Sandra's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted around the circle of watching faces, calculating, measuring, considering her response. And in that hesitation, Raymond found his answer. You can't even say it, he breathed. Of course I'm relieved. Sandra finally burst out. But it was too late, too performative. The words rang hollow. I'm standing here defending you, protecting your reputation, trying to salvage this disaster, and you're questioning my feelings? I'm the victim here. I'm the one being attacked by strangers and... No, Laura said softly, but with absolute certainty. You're not the victim. Sandra's head snapped down toward the child, fury contorting her beautiful features into something ugly. You little... A commotion at the main entrance cut her off. Senator Mitchell's voice boomed across the hall, amplified by rage and privilege. This is unlawful detention. The silver-haired politician stood at the sealed doors, flanked by 3 other congressmen and a federal judge. You cannot hold United States senators against our will. This is a violation of our civil rights, and I will see you prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The crowd shifted, energy crackling like electricity before a storm. Other voices joined in. I have medication at home I need to take. My children are waiting for me. This is kidnapping. Raymond's head of security moved to intercept, his massive frame imposing but his voice level. Sir, with all respect, someone attempted to murder Mr. Jones tonight. Until we identify the perpetrator, no one leaves. Those are his orders. His orders. Senator Mitchell's face purpled. Who the hell does Raymond Jones think he is? He's not law enforcement. He's not government. He's a businessman with delusions of authority. He's a man who was almost poisoned, Mrs. Chin called out, her elderly voice surprisingly strong. And the person who tried to kill him is still in this room. Would you rather we all go home and wait for the next attempt? Perhaps at one of your fundraisers, Senator. The senator's bluster faltered slightly, but his aide leaned in, whispering urgently. Mitchell's expression hardened. I'm calling the police commissioner. We'll see how legal this lockdown is. Please do, Raymond said, finally moving away from Laura and toward the growing confrontation. Call the police. Call the FBI. Call whoever you'd like. But while you're making calls, explain to them why you're so desperate to leave the scene of an attempted murder. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Senator Mitchell's face went from red to pale. Are you suggesting I had something to do with this? I'm suggesting, Raymond said carefully, that anyone desperate to leave has something to hide. How dare you? But there was fear beneath the outrage now. Mitchell's eyes darted around the room, looking for allies, for escape routes. This is slander. My lawyers will bury you. Other guests began shouting, some supporting the senator's demand for release, others arguing for continued lockdown. The careful veneer of civilization that had held through the initial shock was finally cracking, revealing the panic and self-interest underneath. Ladies and gentlemen. Raymond's bodyguard's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone please calm down. But calm was impossible. A woman near the windows began crying hysterically. 2 men nearly came to blows over whether the lockdown was legal. A socialite fainted, or pretended to, drawing a cluster of concerned helpers and creating more chaos. Through it all, cameras flashed. Journalists scribbled notes. Social media updates pinged and chimed as the story spread beyond the walls of the Manhattan Foundation Hall. Raymond could see his life's work crumbling in real time. Tomorrow's headlines wouldn't be about his philanthropy or business success. They'd be about paranoia, chaos, accusations. His reputation, built over decades, was being destroyed in hours. A reporter pushed through the crowd, microphone extended. Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones. Sources are saying this was a coordinated assassination attempt. Can you confirm? Do you have any suspects? Is it true your fiancé is under investigation? What? Sandra shrieked. That's insane. I'm not. Ms. Hartley, another journalist interrupted. Witnesses say you've been trying to discredit the child who saved Raymond Jones's life. Why would you do that? I'm not, I wasn't. Sandra's composure shattered completely. You're twisting everything. I was trying to protect him, protect his reputation. From what? The reporter pressed. From the truth. No. From scandal, from... Sandra realized she was digging herself deeper. She looked around frantically, finding no friendly faces. Even the women she'd been charming earlier had stepped back, watching her with suspicious eyes. Raymond felt something twist in his chest. Was this what love looked like when it was stripped of pretense? Was there anything real underneath Sandra's perfect exterior? Or had their entire relationship been as hollow as her reassurances tonight? "Mr. Jones," a third reporter called out, "do you believe your fiancé was involved in the poisoning?" The question silenced the room. Every eye turned to Raymond. Sandra's face went chalk white. Raymond began, then stopped. What could he say? The truth was, he didn't know. Didn't know what Sandra was capable of, what she truly wanted, whether her coldness tonight was shock or guilt or something else entirely. Their 3 years together suddenly felt like time spent with a stranger. "Raymond," Sandra whispered, her voice breaking. Tell them you know I would never." But he couldn't. The words wouldn't come. In the silence, Laura's small hand slipped into his. The simple gesture, a child offering comfort to an adult, spoke more than any declaration. Sandra saw it. Saw Raymond holding the child's hand while leaving hers extended empty, waiting for reassurance that never came. Something in her expression shifted. The desperation gave way to cold fury. "I see," she said quietly. "I see exactly where I stand." She yanked the engagement ring from her finger. Raymond barely had time to register the action before it was sailing through the air. It hit the marble floor with a crystalline ping, bounced twice, and skittered to rest near the dried wine stain where the terrier had died. "Consider our engagement terminated," Sandra said, her voice shaking with rage. "And when you realize what you've thrown away, when that child's lies are exposed and your empire is in ruins, don't come crawling back to me." She turned and stalked toward the bar, her heels clicking like gunshots against the floor. Guests parted before her like water, no one daring to make eye contact. Raymond stared at the ring glittering in the chandelier light. 3 carats, platinum setting, purchased after a long negotiation about cut and clarity. He'd proposed at a restaurant where they'd had to make reservations 6 months in advance. She'd said yes before he'd finished the question, already thinking about announcement timing and venue selection for the wedding. Had she ever actually loved him? Or just loved the life he could provide? "Mr. Raymond." Laura tugged his hand gently. "Are you sad?" Was he? Raymond searched his feelings and found not sadness, but relief. Exhaustion. And underneath it all, the first whisper of something that might eventually become freedom. "No," he said honestly. "No, I don't think I am." Laura nodded as if she'd expected that answer. She wasn't very nice anyway. Despite everything, the chaos, the accusations, the cameras, the crumbling reputation, Raymond laughed. It was brief and slightly hysterical, but genuine. "No," he agreed. She wasn't. But even as he spoke, his eyes scanned the crowd, searching. Because Sandra's guilt or innocence didn't change the fundamental truth. Someone in this room had tried to kill him. Someone had planned it carefully, systematically, paying bribes and making threats. And they were still here, still watching. Still waiting to finish what they'd started. The commotion at the service entrance drew every eye in the Manhattan Foundation Hall. Security guards emerged from the corridor, flanking a disheveled figure between them. At first, Raymond didn't recognize him. The man's normally pristine appearance had been replaced by something wild and hunted. Then he saw the bow tie, askew but still knotted. The sommelier's vest, torn at one shoulder. The name badge, hanging by a single pin, Pascal Moreau, Master Sommelier. "Let me go." Pascal thrashed against the guard's grip, his French accent thick with panic. "Please, you don't understand. They'll kill her. They'll kill my daughter." Raymond stepped forward, his heart pounding. This was the man. The man who'd marked the bottles. The man who'd been bribed, threatened, coerced into attempted murder. "Bring him here," Raymond ordered, his voice carrying across the now silent hall. The guards dragged Pascal forward. Up close, Raymond could see the terror etched into every line of the sommelier's face. His eyes were red-rimmed, pupils dilated with fear. Sweat darkened his collar despite the air conditioning. His hands shook violently, making the guard's job of restraining him almost unnecessary. The man looked ready to collapse. "Mr. Moreau," Raymond said, keeping his voice level despite the rage simmering beneath. "I think you have something to tell me." Pascal's eyes found Raymond's, and something inside him seemed to break. His knees buckled. The guards caught him, but he sagged between them like a puppet with cut strings. "I'm sorry," Pascal whispered, the words barely audible. "Mon Dieu, I'm so sorry. I never wanted. I never thought." His voice cracked, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Start from the beginning," Raymond's bodyguard commanded, his tone leaving no room for evasion. "Everything. Now." Pascal drew a shuddering breath. When he spoke, his words tumbled out in a desperate rush, as if confession might somehow absolve him. 3 days ago, a man came to my home. Not here, to my home in Queens. His accent thickened with emotion. He knew things. He knew my daughter's name, Isabel. He knew what school she attends, what time she leaves, what route she takes to the subway. He knew everything. The crowd pressed closer, straining to hear. Even the journalists had stopped taking photos, their attention captured by the raw fear in Pascal's confession. What did he want? Raymond asked, though he already knew the answer. "You." Pascal's eyes lifted, meeting Raymond's with desperate honesty. "He wanted you dead. He said it had to be at the gala, public, witnessed, documented. He wanted everyone to see." A sob choked his words. "He gave me money. So much money. $50,000 in cash, in a briefcase. Said it was enough for Isabel and me to disappear, to start over somewhere safe." "But you didn't take it," Raymond observed. "Not at first." Pascal shook his head violently. "Non. I threw the briefcase at him. I told him to leave, that I would call the police. I said no amount of money could make me kill a man." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Then he showed me the photographs." A chill ran down Raymond's spine. Photographs. Of Isabel. Pascal's voice broke completely. Leaving school. At the park. Sleeping in her bedroom, through her window. The last words came out strangled. He had been watching her. For weeks, maybe longer. He said if I refused, if I told anyone, I would find her. He couldn't finish. His entire body convulsed with sobs. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman near the windows covered her mouth. Even the hardened journalists looked shaken. "Jesus Christ," someone muttered. Laura had moved to stand beside Raymond, her small hand gripping his jacket. He felt her trembling and realized she understood all too well what it meant to be vulnerable, to be hunted, to have your safety be someone else's weapon. "What did you do?" Raymond asked, his voice gentler now. Pascal was a victim too, caught in a web not of his making. "What could I do?" Pascal's rhetorical question hung in the air like smoke. "I'm a sommelier. I have no power, no connections, no way to protect my daughter from a man who could find her anywhere, photograph her anywhere." He looked up at Raymond with hollow eyes. "So I took the money. And I took the marker. A blue marker, special ink that only shows under certain light. He said to mark the bottles you prefer, the ones you'd be most likely to drink." "How many?" Raymond's bodyguard asked. 20. The number fell like a stone. He wanted 20 bottles marked. He said even if you avoided the first or second, you would eventually drink one. He said to make sure. To be thorough. Pascal's face crumpled. "I marked them over 2 days. During inventory, when no one was watching. Each time I did it, I prayed you wouldn't notice, that someone would stop you, that something would save you because I couldn't." "Someone did," Raymond said quietly, his hand moving to rest on Laura's shoulder. "Someone braver than any of us." Pascal's eyes found Laura for the first time. He stared at the small girl in her faded dress, then began to cry harder, whether from relief or shame, Raymond couldn't tell. "The poison," the bodyguard pressed. "Where did you get it?" "I didn't." Pascal said desperately. "I only marked the bottles. He said someone else would handle the rest. He said the less I knew, the safer Isabel would be." He looked around at the sea of faces, his expression pleading. "I never saw the poison. I don't know how it got into the wine. I swear on my daughter's life, I only marked the bottles." Raymond believed him. The man was too broken, too terrified to be lying. Which meant someone else, someone with access to the marked bottles, had done the actual poisoning. Someone who worked the event. Someone in this building. "Mr. Moreau," Raymond said, his voice taking on steel. I need you to tell me who paid you. Who threatened your daughter? Who orchestrated all of this? Pascal's face went white. I can't. You can and you will. None. Pascal's panic returned in full force. You don't understand, he said. If I ever told anyone, Isabel would disappear. Not die, disappear. He said I would spend the rest of my life wondering if she was alive, suffering somewhere, calling for me. His voice rose to a near scream. He said he has people everywhere. In the police, in the courts, in places I can't even imagine. He said no one could protect her. No one. I can protect her, Raymond said firmly. I have resources, security, connections. So does he. Pascal interrupted, wild-eyed. Don't you see? He knew everything about my life. Everything. He walked into my home like he owned it. He followed my daughter for weeks without anyone noticing. He has this power, this reach. His breathing came in short gasps, hyperventilating. If I tell you, she dies. If I don't tell you, maybe she lives. Maybe if I just stay quiet, maybe. Pascal. The new voice was female, firm but kind. Mrs. Chun had pushed through the crowd, her elderly face set with determination. That man threatened your daughter because he knew you would do anything to protect her. That's what parents do. But he also knew that fear would keep you silent, and silence is his greatest weapon. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Mrs. Chun cut him off. My grandson is 7 years old. If someone threatened him, I would move heaven and earth to keep him safe. But I would also know that letting monsters operate in darkness only gives them more power. She moved closer, her voice dropping but losing none of its strength. The man who threatened Isabel is still here. In this room. Watching you right now, probably. Wondering if you'll break. And if you stay silent, what's to stop him from threatening her again? What's to stop him from using her to force you into worse crimes? Pascal's face worked through emotions. Fear, anger, desperation, resignation. His eyes scanned the crowd, searching for something or someone. He said he would know, Pascal whispered. He said he would know if I told, and she would pay the price. Then we make sure she's safe first, Raymond said decisively. He turned to his bodyguard. Call my head of personal security. I want a full protection detail sent to. He looked at Pascal. Where is your daughter now? With my sister in Queens. She's supposed to sleep over tonight because of my shift. Pascal's voice wavered. But what if he's already there? What if? Give me the address. Now. Raymond's bodyguard already had his phone out. Pascal recited an address in a trembling voice. Within seconds, the bodyguard was on the phone, barking orders. Full detail, code red. Child protection, possible hostile surveillance. I want eyes on the location in 10 minutes and extraction in 20. No one gets close to that building. As the orders went out, Raymond pulled Pascal's full attention back to him. Listen to me very carefully. In less than half an hour, your daughter will be in a safe house with armed guards. No one will get near her. Not the man who threatened you, not his associates, no one. She will be protected by the best security money can buy. You can do that? Pascal's voice cracked with desperate hope. I can and I will. But you need to tell me who hired you. You need to tell me now, before he realizes what's happening and tries to stop us. Pascal looked around the room again, his eyes moving from face to face. Raymond watched him, wondering what he was seeing. Was the killer watching? Was Pascal looking at him right now? He's here, Pascal finally said, his voice so quiet Raymond almost missed it. In this room. He said he would be. He said he wanted to watch. A collective intake of breath swept through the crowd. People stepped back from each other instinctively, creating space, creating distance. Trust evaporated like morning dew. Who? Raymond demanded. Pascal, who is he? The sommelier's mouth opened. Then closed. Opened again. His entire body shook with the effort of forcing the words out. He said. Pascal swallowed hard. He said you would never suspect him. That you trusted him completely. That you built your empire on his advice. Tears streamed down his face. He said when you died, he would comfort your mourners and no one would ever know. Raymond's blood turned to ice. Someone he trusted completely. Someone whose advice had shaped his empire. Someone close enough to know his wine preferences, his habits, his schedule. The list was suddenly terrifyingly short. A name. Raymond's voice was barely recognizable, rough with fury and betrayal. Give me a name, Pascal. Pascal's eyes locked onto someone in the crowd. Raymond followed his gaze, but there were too many people, too many faces. He couldn't tell who Pascal was looking at. He has. Pascal started, then faltered. He has a ring. Gold, with a ruby. Very large, very old. He said it was his grandfather's. The description Laura and Josh had given. The same man. The details were aligning, narrowing the field. What else? Raymond pressed. His voice, his appearance, anything. Southern, Pascal said. Very refined, but Southern. Old money accent. Like he was taught how to speak by expensive schools, but never lost his roots. He closed his eyes, concentrating. Tall. Silver hair. Maybe 60 years old. Very dignified. The kind of man who commands rooms without trying. Raymond's mind raced. Southern accent, silver hair, around 60. With his level of trust. With influence over his business decisions. Oh God. His name, Raymond said, each word precise and controlled. Say his name. Pascal's eyes opened, finding Raymond's. In them, Raymond saw apology, shame, and something else, warning. He said if I told, he would know. He said he always knows. He's bluffing, Raymond's bodyguard interjected. Men like that rely on fear, on the illusion of omniscience. But he's not a god. He's just a man. You don't understand. Pascal's voice rose again. He knew things he shouldn't know. Private things. Things about Raymond that only close friends would know. He described Raymond's office, his private collection, his routines at home. His eyes bored into Raymond's. He's been close to you for a very long time. Close enough to learn everything. The implications were staggering. Not just a business associate, but someone with intimate access. Someone who'd been in Raymond's home, his private spaces. Someone he'd let behind the carefully constructed walls of his public persona. How many people fit that description? 5, 3, 1. Laura tugged Raymond's jacket insistently. When he looked down, her dark eyes were urgent. You believe me now, don't you? She whispered, her small voice cutting through the noise and chaos to reach something fundamental in Raymond's heart. Raymond knelt down, bringing himself to her level again. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, security shouted orders, Pascal sobbed, and journalists documented everything. But in that moment, Raymond saw only Laura, the child who'd risked everything when no one else would. Yes, he said clearly, loudly enough for those nearby to hear. I believe you. I believe every word you've said. He took her small hands in his larger ones. And I'm sorry I ever doubted you, even for a second. Laura's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. It's okay. Grown-ups don't usually believe kids like me. Then grown-ups are fools, Raymond said fiercely. You saved my life. You showed courage that puts everyone in this room to shame. Including me. A flash bulb popped. Raymond looked up to see a photographer capturing the moment, the billionaire kneeling before the poor child, his hands holding hers, his face showing something that could only be called reverence. Tomorrow's headlines would be interesting indeed. But right now, Raymond didn't care about headlines. He cared about the truth. He stood, pulling Laura to his side protectively. His eyes found Pascal, who was watching them with an expression that mixed envy and sorrow. My daughter is 6, Pascal said quietly. Same age as her. When Isabel was born, I promised I would always protect her. That I would never let anyone hurt her. He looked at Raymond. I broke my promise tonight. I chose her safety over yours. I chose my child over a stranger. His voice hardened slightly. And I would do it again. Every time. Without hesitation. I know, Raymond said, and meant it. And I don't blame you for that choice. Any father would do the same. But you need the name. I need the name. Pascal closed his eyes again, his lips moving as if in prayer. When he opened them, his face had changed, resolve replacing fear, determination replacing desperation. My daughter is safe now? She will be in 15 minutes, the bodyguard confirmed, listening to his earpiece. Team is in position. They have visual on the building. No hostile activity detected. Then give the word, Pascal said. When she's secured. When you know she's truly safe. Then I'll tell you everything. I'll point him out, I'll testify, I'll do whatever you need. He straightened slightly, finding dignity in his surrender. But not before Isabel is safe. Not 1 second before. Raymond nodded. It was fair. More than fair, given what the man had been through. They waited. The crowd shifted restlessly, whispers building like gathering thunder. Raymond could feel hundreds of eyes on him, on Pascal, on Laura. Everyone knew they were moments away from a revelation that would change everything. Somewhere in this glittering crowd, a killer stood in his expensive suit, wearing his ruby ring, watching with his cold southern eyes. Was he nervous? Did he feel the net tightening? Or was he arrogant enough to believe he'd still escape? The bodyguard's earpiece crackled. He listened intently, then nodded. Sir, the team has Isabel. She's secure. They're transporting her to the safe house now. Pascal's entire body sagged with relief so profound he nearly collapsed again. Thank God, he whispered. Thank God, thank God, thank God. She's safe, Pascal, Raymond said gently. Now tell me, who tried to have me killed? Pascal's hand rose slowly, his finger pointing into the crowd. His voice, when it came, was steady and clear, the voice of a man who'd finally chosen truth over terror. Him, Pascal said. That man. Right there. Every head turned to follow his finger. And standing in the crowd, his silver hair perfectly groomed, his expensive suit immaculate, a large gold ring with a ruby gleaming on his right hand, was a man Raymond had known for 15 years. A man he'd trusted with his finances, his investments, his future. A man who smiled warmly at parties and gave sage advice over whiskey. A man who'd stood beside Raymond through business deals and personal crises. Franklin Hale. Raymond's banker. His financial advisor. His friend. The betrayal hit like a physical blow, stealing Raymond's breath and making the world tilt sickeningly. No, Raymond heard himself say, though he already knew it was true. No, that's not. Franklin. Franklin Hale's expression didn't change. His slight smile remained in place, urbane and pleasant. He adjusted his cufflinks, gold, Raymond noticed, with small rubies inset, and spoke in his cultured southern drawl. Well, Franklin said calmly, as if commenting on the weather. I suppose the cat's out of the bag. And in that moment, everything Raymond thought he knew about loyalty, friendship, and trust crumbled to dust. Raymond stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were showing him. Franklin Hale. 15 years of partnership, of late-night strategy sessions, of whiskey shared in his private office. 15 years of building an empire together, of celebrating victories and weathering storms side by side. 15 years of lies. Franklin, Raymond's voice came out hoarse, barely recognizable as his own. Tell me Pascal is wrong. Tell me this is some kind of mistake. Franklin adjusted his tie with the casual precision of a man who'd never been rattled in his life. His smile remained pleasant, almost amused. Would you believe me if I did? The question hung in the air like poison gas. Around them, the crowd had gone deathly silent. Security moved to surround Franklin, but he made no attempt to run. He stood there as calmly as if he were at a cocktail party, one hand in his pocket, the other still visible with that damning ruby ring catching the light. Why? The word tore from Raymond's throat. Why would you? We built everything together. I trusted you with every decision, every investment, his voice broke. You were my friend. Was I? Franklin's smile widened slightly, taking on an edge that Raymond had never seen before. Or was I simply useful? A competent advisor who helped you make money while you took all the credit, all the glory, all the power. That's not. You were a partner. An equal partner in. Equal. Franklin's laugh was soft, cultured, and utterly cold. Oh, Raymond. You really do believe your own mythology, don't you? He took a step forward, and security immediately tensed, hands moving toward weapons. Franklin ignored them completely, his eyes locked on Raymond. Let me ask you something. When Forbes did that profile on you last year, the one that called you the architect of modern finance, how many times did they mention my name? Raymond's mouth opened, then closed. He couldn't remember. Hadn't thought to check. 0, Franklin supplied helpfully. Not once. Despite the fact that half the strategies they praised you for were mine. Despite 15 years of me turning your instincts into executable plans, your hunches into billion-dollar returns. His voice remained conversational, but something vicious lurked beneath. You were the face, Raymond. The personality. The billionaire who graced magazine covers and spoke at conferences. And I was the man who made it possible, sitting in the shadows, collecting my fee while you collected the glory. You were compensated well, Raymond said, his voice strengthening with anger. More than fairly for your work. Compensated. Franklin savored the word like wine. Yes, I was paid. Like an employee. Like hired help. While you played emperor. He gestured around the opulent hall. Look at this. Your 39th birthday gala. Senators and celebrities, journalists documenting your every word, hundreds of people here to celebrate your genius. His eyes glittered. When was the last time you asked about my family, Raymond? Do you even know if I have children? Can you remember my wife's name? The silence that followed was damning. Raymond's face flushed. He couldn't remember. In 15 years of partnership, he'd never thought to ask. That's what I thought, Franklin said softly. I was a tool. A useful instrument. And when instruments no longer serve their purpose, they're discarded. I never discarded you, Raymond protested. You're still. I was being pushed out. The sudden rage in Franklin's voice made people flinch. For the first time, his composure cracked, revealing the fury beneath. Don't act ignorant, Raymond. You think I didn't know about the meetings with Sterling and Associates? The consultations with those young hotshots from Silicon Valley who promise you blockchain and AI solutions. His breathing quickened. You were phasing me out. Replacing me with younger, cheaper, more exciting options. I could see my entire legacy being erased, and you never even had the decency to tell me to my face. Raymond felt the accusation like a slap. Because there was truth in it. He had been meeting with other firms, considering new approaches. But he told himself it was just exploratory, just keeping options open. He'd never intended to. Or had he? So you decided to kill me? Raymond's voice trembled with barely controlled fury. Because your pride was wounded? Because you felt unappreciated? You threatened a child, poisoned wine that could have killed dozens of people, all because I didn't give you enough credit. Oh, Raymond. Franklin's composure returned, his smile sliding back into place like a mask. It was never just about credit. It was about power. About legacy. About making sure that when your empire crumbled, and it would have crumbled, I made sure of that, I would be there to pick up the pieces. To finally step out of your shadow and build something in my own name. You're insane, Raymond breathed. I'm practical, Franklin corrected. You see, your death would have triggered a cascade. Your holdings would have been in chaos, your companies leaderless, your investors panicking. And who better to steady the ship than your trusted advisor? The man who knew every deal, every secret, every weakness in your empire. His eyes gleamed. I would have been the savior. The steady hand in crisis. Within a year, I'd have consolidated control. Within 2, I'd have rebuilt it all in my image. Your empire would have become mine, and the world would have finally known Franklin Hale's name. The pure calculated cruelty of it took Raymond's breath away. This wasn't crime of passion. It was business. Cold, calculated, executed with the same precision Franklin had brought to their financial strategies. You're not going to get away with this, Raymond said, his voice steady despite the rage coursing through him. Pascal identified you. We have witnesses. The police. We'll have a very interesting time building a case, Franklin interrupted smoothly. I'm careful, Raymond. You know that. I've never done anything that could be traced back to me. The sommelier has a description. So what? There are a dozen men in this room who fit it. The ring. He held up his hand, displaying the ruby. My grandfather's. Worn by 3 generations of Hale men. Hardly unique evidence. He paused. And poor Pascal will have a hard time testifying when he's under investigation himself for attempted murder. You bastard, Pascal snarled from where security still held him. You said my daughter would be safe if I stayed silent. I said a lot of things, Franklin replied mildly. None of them legally binding. Before anyone could respond, Laura's small voice cut through the tension. You're forgetting something. Every eye turned to the child. She stood beside Raymond, her faded dress and worn shoes a stark contrast to the luxury around her. But her eyes held a clarity that made even Franklin pause. What's that, little girl? He asked, his tone patronizing. I saw you too, Laura said simply. And I remember things. Franklin's smile didn't waver. Do you now? Yes. Laura stepped forward slightly, her hand still gripping Raymond's jacket. You had a watch. Silver. On your left wrist. It had a broken clasp. I could see it was loose, like it might fall off. The words dropped into the silence like stones into water. Raymond's eyes immediately went to Franklin's left wrist. He wore a watch, a vintage silver Patek Philippe. And as Franklin shifted slightly, Raymond could see what Laura had described. The clasp was indeed damaged, held together with what looked like a temporary wire repair. A watch, Franklin said slowly, his smile tightening. How observant. But Laura wasn't done. And when you gave the money to the wine man, you took it from your inside jacket pocket. The left side. You're left-handed. I noticed because my teacher is left-handed too, and she holds things the same way. Raymond's heart began to pound. These were details, specific verifiable details that only someone who'd actually witnessed the exchange would know. Not just descriptions that could apply to anyone, but precise observations that narrowed the field dramatically. A left-handed man, Raymond said slowly, his mind racing. With a damaged silver watch clasp. That's not a description that fits dozens of people, Franklin. That fits you specifically. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Franklin's face. He glanced at his watch, then at Laura, then at the crowd pressing in around him. Raymond could see him calculating, measuring, trying to determine if this changed his odds. The child is mistaken, Franklin said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Or coached. Probably by. By who? Raymond interrupted. Who would coach her? She's a street child who came here looking for food. She had no agenda, no reason to target you specifically. His voice rose. Unless you're suggesting I somehow orchestrated this entire thing, including poisoning myself? The logic was inescapable. Franklin's face hardened, the urbane mask slipping further. But then Laura spoke again, her voice quieter now, uncertain. There's something else. What? Raymond looked down at her. Laura was staring past Franklin, into the crowd. Her brow was furrowed, her small face troubled. When the scary man was talking to the wine man, someone else was watching. From far away. I couldn't see good, but... She trailed off, her eyes tracking across the room. But what, Laura? Raymond encouraged gently. But I think they were happy about it. Like they wanted it to happen too. Her eyes stopped, fixing on a point in the crowd. Like they were helping. Raymond followed her gaze. She was looking toward where Sandra stood near the bar, her face pale, her hands gripping a champagne flute so tightly her knuckles were white. And in that moment, Sandra's eyes did something that would have been imperceptible if everyone hadn't been watching so intently. They flickered. Just for a fraction of a second, they moved from Laura to someone else in the crowd. A brief, involuntary glance that spoke volumes. Raymond turned his head slightly, following the direction of Sandra's gaze. She'd looked at Franklin. The pieces began clicking together in Raymond's mind with horrifying clarity. Sandra's coldness tonight. Her insistence that Laura was lying. Her desperate attempts to downplay the poisoning. Her fury when Raymond had believed the child over her. Oh my God, Raymond breathed. Sandra, you knew. What? Sandra's voice pitched higher. That's ridiculous. I didn't. You knew, Raymond repeated, louder now. That's why you've been trying to discredit Laura all night. That's why you wanted me to dismiss this as spoiled wine. You knew what Franklin was planning. No. Sandra slammed her glass down on the bar, the crystal shattering. You're insane. You're listening to a child's fantasies and… Were you helping him? Raymond's voice was ice. Or were you just going to let me die and comfort yourself with my fortune? Sandra's face went through a rapid cascade of emotions: shock, rage, fear, and finally, something that looked almost like relief. As if she'd been waiting to stop pretending. You want to know the truth, Raymond? Her voice dripped with venom. Fine. Here's the truth. I've been planning to leave you for months. Franklin offered me a way out. A way to get what I deserved after 3 years of playing the perfect fiancé to a man who cared more about his empire than the woman beside him. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The journalists' cameras clicked frantically. So you were part of it, Raymond said, his voice hollow. I didn't poison anything, Sandra snapped. I didn't threaten anyone. I just… She paused, seeming to realize she was confessing in front of hundreds of witnesses. I just didn't stop it. When Franklin told me his plan, I didn't warn you. I didn't call the police. I just let it happen. You let someone try to murder me, Raymond said slowly, so you could inherit my wealth and run off with my financial advisor. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Sandra's composure shattered completely. It was supposed to be quick, clean. You were supposed to drink the wine at the first toast. You'd collapse, everyone would think it was a heart attack or stroke, and by the time they figured out it was poison, Franklin and I would be long gone with our shares secured. She glared at Laura with pure hatred. But then that little brat had to play hero. Laura flinched, pressing closer to Raymond. He put his arm around her protectively, feeling her trembling. So the engagement, Raymond said, each word precisely controlled. The wedding planning. The 3 years. All of it was just setting up this moment. Not at first, Sandra admitted. At first, I thought I could make it work. Thought I could learn to love you, or at least tolerate you. Her laugh was bitter. But you're impossible to love, Raymond. You're married to your work, your image, your empire. There's no room for anyone else. Franklin understood that. He lived it for 15 years. We bonded over being invisible to you. The revelation hit Raymond like a physical blow. His fiancée and his closest advisor, united by their resentment of him, planning his death over intimate conversations about how little he valued them. Had he been that blind? That self-absorbed? Mr. Raymond. Laura's small voice pulled him from his spiral. Are you okay? Was he? Raymond looked around the glittering hall, at the wealth and power and influence that surrounded him. At the people who'd come to celebrate his success. At the empire he'd built on the backs of people whose names he couldn't remember, whose lives he'd never bothered to know. He'd thought himself untouchable. A self-made man who'd conquered the business world through brilliance and determination. But really, he'd just been a man too busy building monuments to himself to notice the people whose labor made those monuments possible. No, Raymond answered Laura honestly. No, I'm not okay. That's okay, Laura said, her small hand squeezing his. You don't gotta be okay all the time. My mama taught me that. The simple wisdom from a 6-year-old child made Raymond's eyes burn with unexpected tears. Here was this little girl who had nothing, who'd been doubted and dismissed and nearly thrown out into the street, and she was comforting him. Thank you, Raymond managed. Security moved forward, surrounding both Franklin and Sandra. Franklin remained calm, already calculating his legal strategy. But Sandra fought, shrieking protests and denials even as she was restrained. You can't arrest me. I didn't actually do anything. I just didn't stop it. That's not illegal. Actually, Raymond's bodyguard said calmly, failure to report a known felony, conspiracy to commit murder, and accessory before the fact all carry significant prison time. You'll have plenty of time to research the specifics. As Sandra was led away, still screaming, her perfect facade completely destroyed, Raymond turned back to Franklin. Their eyes met across the crowd, and for a moment, it was just the two of them. Two men who'd built something together, and who destroyed it just as thoroughly. Was any of it real? Raymond asked quietly. The partnership, the friendship, any of it? Franklin considered the question, his head tilted slightly. Then he smiled, and it was the saddest smile Raymond had ever seen. For about the first year, Franklin said. Then you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a function. And functions can be replaced. He straightened his jacket, accepting the handcuffs with dignity. I hope you learn from this, Raymond. Before you make an enemy of the next person who helps you build your empire. Then he was being led away, his silver hair perfectly groomed, his expensive suit immaculate, his ruby ring glinting under the chandeliers. Still presenting the image of dignity, even in defeat. Raymond stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by wreckage, broken glass, spilled wine, shattered reputations. His empire intact, but his understanding of it fundamentally changed. And beside him stood Laura, a child in a faded dress, who'd shown more courage and wisdom than anyone else in the room. Laura, Raymond said softly, will you tell me about your mother? The one who taught you it's okay not to be okay. Laura looked up at him, surprised. Then slowly, tentatively, she began to talk. And for the first time in years, Raymond truly listened to someone else's story without thinking about how it related to his own. But before Laura could speak more than a few sentences about her mother, about the woman who cleaned offices at night and still made time to braid her daughter's hair, her eyes suddenly fixed on something across the room. Her small body went rigid, her hand tightening around Raymond's with surprising strength. Mr. Raymond, she whispered urgently. I need to tell you something. Raymond knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. Around them, security was still processing Franklin and Sandra's arrests, but the crowd remained, too captivated by the unfolding drama to leave despite the earlier demands for release. What is it? Raymond asked gently. Laura's eyes darted toward Sandra, who was being held near the bar by two security guards. Sandra had stopped struggling, her perfect composure returning now that the initial shock of arrest had passed. She stood with her head high, dabbing at her eyes with a cocktail napkin. Whether the tears were real or performed, Raymond couldn't tell anymore. Laura said, her voice small but certain. Miss Sandra. She's lying about something. We know she was involved with Franklin, Raymond said. She already confessed. No. Laura shook her head firmly. I mean yes, but there's more. Something bigger. The child's brow furrowed with the effort of articulating something she felt but couldn't quite name. She's pretending to be caught, but she's not really scared. Not like she should be. Raymond studied Laura's face, then looked back at Sandra. His former fiancée was speaking quietly to one of the guards, her expression one of wounded dignity. To anyone watching, she looked like a woman wrongly accused, maintaining composure in the face of injustice. But Laura had been right about everything else tonight. What do you see that I don't? Raymond asked. Laura bit her lip, thinking. When people are really scared, they shake. Like the wine man, Mr. Pascal. He was shaking so much. And the waiter, Josh. He was so scared he tried to run away. Her eyes returned to Sandra. But she's not shaking. She's just waiting. Waiting for what? I don't know. Laura's frustration was evident. But when she looks at you, Mr. Raymond, her eyes are wrong. Like when my mama looks at the landlord. Like she's pretending to be nice, but really she wants to hurt him. Raymond felt a chill run down his spine. He'd been so focused on Franklin's betrayal, on processing 15 years of partnership revealed as resentment, that he hadn't fully considered Sandra's role beyond passive complicity. But what if Laura was right? What if Sandra's involvement went deeper than just failing to warn him? He stood slowly, his eyes locked on Sandra. She noticed his attention and her expression shifted, softening, becoming vulnerable. Exactly the kind of calculated response that had fooled him for 3 years. Laura, Raymond said quietly, never taking his eyes off Sandra. I need you to stay close to me. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Raymond moved toward Sandra, the crowd parting before him. His bodyguard fell into step beside him, hand resting casually on his weapon. When they reached Sandra, she looked up at Raymond with eyes that glistened with unshed tears. Raymond, she said, her voice breaking. Please. You have to believe me. I was scared, I made a mistake, but I never wanted you dead. I swear on everything She doesn't love you, Laura said suddenly, her small voice cutting through Sandra's practiced plea. She's smiling, but inside, she hates you. The words dropped into the space between them like a grenade. Gasps erupted from the surrounding guests. Sandra's carefully composed expression flickered, just for a fraction of a second, before smoothing back into wounded innocence. That's a horrible thing to say, Sandra breathed, looking down at Laura with what appeared to be genuine hurt. I'm sorry you feel that way, sweetheart. I know tonight has been frightening for you, and you don't understand the complexity of adult relationships. You're pretending, Laura insisted, her voice stronger now. You're pretending to be sad, but you're not. You're just mad you got caught. Sandra's eyes hardened slightly before she caught herself. I understand you're trying to help Mr. Jones, dear, but making false accusations isn't. Are they false? Raymond interrupted, his voice sharp. Are they, Sandra? Sandra turned to him, and now the tears fell freely. How can you ask me that? After 3 years together, after all we've built, all we've planned, you're going to take the word of a child over mine. She reached for his hand, but the guards tightened their grip, preventing movement. I made a mistake, Raymond. A terrible mistake. But it was out of fear, out of confusion. Franklin manipulated me, made me think. Made you think what? Raymond pressed. That you'd be better off with me dead? No. Sandra's voice rose. That you were becoming someone I didn't recognize. That your obsession with success was destroying us. Franklin said, he said we could start over, build something new together. She sobbed, the sound raw and painful. I was weak. I was stupid. But I never stopped loving you. Several guests murmured sympathetically. A woman near the front dabbed at her eyes. Even some of the hardened security personnel looked uncomfortable, as if witnessing something too intimate, too painful to be seen by strangers. But Laura wasn't swayed. She's lying, the child said flatly. I can tell. People who really love someone don't let bad things happen to them. My mama would never let anyone hurt me, even if she was scared. Real love protects people. Out of the mouths of babes, Mrs. Chen said from somewhere in the crowd, her elderly voice approving. Sandra's face flushed. I don't have to defend myself to a child, she snapped, her composure cracking. Then, catching herself, she softened again. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, this is all just so overwhelming. But the damage was done. The momentary flash of anger had revealed something beneath the tears, something cold and calculating. Raymond saw several guests exchange glances, suspicion blooming. Sandra, Raymond said slowly. Tell me the truth. What exactly did Franklin promise you? Sandra's eyes darted left, then right, as if looking for escape routes. I told you. He said we could be together, that we could. No. Raymond stepped closer, forcing her to meet his eyes. Tell me specifically. What was the plan? When I died, what happened next? We would. Sandra faltered. We would grieve together. Support each other through the loss. And eventually, when enough time had passed. How much time? Raymond demanded. A year? 6 months? 3. Sandra's mouth opened and closed. Too long of a pause. Too much calculation in her eyes. 30 days, Laura said quietly. That's how long people have to wait sometimes. 4 money things. 4 wills. Raymond's blood ran cold. Is that what he promised you, Sandra? That after 30 days, you'd inherit? That you could claim your share as my bereaved fiancé and run off with Franklin? It wasn't like that. But Sandra's protest was weakening, her voice losing conviction. Then what was it like? Raymond pressed. Walk me through it. Step by step. What was supposed to happen tonight after I drank the poisoned wine? Sandra's face had gone pale. I can't. Try, Raymond said, his voice hard as stone. For once in our relationship, give me complete honesty. Sandra looked around at the sea of faces, all watching, all judging. The press cameras documenting every moment. The guests who'd once envied her position, now looking at her with disgust or pity. Her shoulders sagged, and for a moment, Raymond thought she might actually tell the truth. Then her expression changed. Hardened. The tears stopped as if someone had turned off a faucet. You want the truth, Raymond? Her voice had lost its tremor, become steady and cold. Fine. Here's the truth. I've been planning to leave you for 8 months. Since the night you forgot my birthday because you had a merger meeting. Since the morning you asked me to reschedule our engagement photos because a client flew in unexpectedly. Since every single time you chose your empire over the woman who was supposed to be your partner. The words came faster now, venom underlying each syllable. Franklin offered me an out. A way to get what I deserved after 3 years of playing second fiddle to your ambition. Was it wrong? Maybe. Did I care? She laughed bitterly. Not even a little. You were going to die anyway, Raymond. Franklin was just accelerating the inevitable heart attack or stroke that comes from working 18-hour days and living on scotch and stress. Gasps echoed through the room. Raymond felt the words like physical blows, each one revealing how completely he'd misunderstood their relationship. So yes, Sandra continued, her voice rising. I knew about the poison. I knew about the marked bottles. And I didn't stop it because frankly, Raymond, the world won't miss another billionaire too obsessed with his own importance to notice the people around him. She looked directly at Laura. Even a street child could see what you are. Maybe you should listen to her more often. The confession hung in the air, brutal and complete. Several guests looked away, unable to meet Raymond's eyes. The journalists scribbled frantically, already writing tomorrow's headlines. Raymond's bodyguard moved forward. Ms. Hartley, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to. Wait, Laura said suddenly, her small voice somehow carrying through the tension. Wait, stop. Everyone turned to her. The child was staring at Sandra with an expression Raymond couldn't quite read, confusion mixed with something else. Certainty, maybe. Or realization. What is it, Laura? Raymond asked. Laura's brow furrowed. She's telling the truth about hating you. About wanting to leave. About not stopping Franklin. The child paused, thinking hard. But she's lying about something else. Something bigger. Sandra's face went blank. What are you talking about? You said you knew about the poison, Laura continued slowly, working through the logic. You said you knew about the marked bottles. But... She looked up at Raymond. She didn't act surprised when the dog died. Not even a little bit. She just got mad. Raymond replayed the moment in his mind. The terrier collapsing, foam at its mouth. The crowd screams. And Sandra. Sandra had called Laura insane, had demanded the child be removed, but she hadn't been shocked. Hadn't even pretended to be surprised that the wine was poisoned. Because she already knew, Raymond breathed. Not just that Franklin had a plan, but specifically that the wine was poisoned. That it would work exactly as it did. Ridiculous, Sandra said, but her voice had lost its certainty. I assumed when the dog died that. No, Laura interrupted. When people assume things, they ask questions. Like what happened? Or is it really poison? But you didn't ask anything. You just tried to make everyone stop paying attention. The child's eyes narrowed. Like you knew what it was before it happened. Sandra's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked trapped, cornered. And in that moment, Raymond saw something in her expression that made his blood run cold. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Not the performed emotion she'd been displaying, but actual terror. Sandra, Raymond said slowly. What aren't you telling us? Nothing. I've told you everything. Franklin planned it, I didn't stop it, that's all. It's not her, Laura said suddenly, her voice filled with realization. I mean, she's bad. She knew. But she's not the one who did it. She's not the one who put the poison in the bottles. The room went silent. Every eye turned from Sandra to Laura, confusion rippling through the crowd. What do you mean? Raymond asked carefully. Laura's small face was scrunched in concentration. Mr. Franklin paid the wine man to mark the bottles. He threatened him about his daughter. But... She looked up at Raymond. Who actually put the poison in? Mr. Pascal said he only marked them. He said someone else was supposed to do the rest. The implications hit Raymond like a freight train. Franklin had orchestrated the marking. Sandra had failed to warn him. But neither of them had admitted to the actual poisoning, the act that had killed the dog and would have killed Raymond. Miss Sandra knew it was poisoned before the dog died, Laura continued. That means she knew who put it in the bottles. She knew because she was working with them. The child turned to Sandra. It's not just Mr. Franklin, is it? There's someone else. Someone you're more scared of than him. Sandra's face had gone white. She was shaking now, not performed trembling, but genuine physical fear. Her eyes darted around the room, no longer calculating, just searching desperately for something. Or someone. I can't, Sandra whispered. You don't understand. If I say anything, if I tell you. Tell us what? Raymond demanded. Who else is involved, Sandra? She'll kill me, Sandra said, her voice barely audible. She's watching right now. She's always watching. And if I... She... Raymond interrupted. The person who poisoned the wine is a woman? Sandra's eyes went wide, realizing she'd said too much. No. I didn't. I don't know what I'm saying. The stress, the accusations, I'm just confused. It's not her, Laura repeated, but this time she was looking out at the crowd. Not yet. There's someone else. Someone we haven't found yet. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled guests. People looked at each other with renewed suspicion. If Sandra wasn't the actual poisoner, if there was another woman involved, then who? One of the catering staff? Another guest? Someone else with access to the marked bottles? Raymond, his bodyguard, said urgently. We need to expand the investigation. If there's another conspirator. But before he could finish, a commotion erupted near the kitchen entrance. A woman's voice, high and panicked, cut through the tension. Fire! There's a fire in the storage room. Smoke began seeping under the service door, thin and acrid. Alarms started blaring. Guests began to panic, pushing toward exits that were still sealed. In the chaos, Raymond's eyes met Sandra's. And in that moment, he saw something that made his heart stop, relief. As if the fire was somehow a gift, a distraction, an escape. It's her, Laura said, gripping Raymond's hand with both of hers. Whoever else is here, she's doing this. She's trying to make everyone run away so we can't find her. Raymond lifted Laura into his arms, protecting her from the surging crowd. Through the smoke and panic, he scanned the faces around him, looking for someone out of place, someone who seemed too calm, someone who... But there were too many people, too much chaos. Whoever the second conspirator was, she'd chosen her moment perfectly. And in the confusion, she was disappearing into the smoke like a ghost. The fire alarms shrieked through the Manhattan Foundation Hall, their piercing wail cutting through the panicked voices and rushing footsteps. Smoke continued to seep from beneath the service door, spreading in thin tendrils across the marble floor like searching fingers. Everyone remained calm. Raymond's head of security bellowed, his voice amplified by years of military training. The exits will be opened in controlled groups. No pushing, no running. We will evacuate safely and orderly. But panic doesn't follow orders. Guests surged toward the sealed doors, their earlier demands for release now transformed into desperate pleas. A woman in a silver gown stumbled, nearly trampled before two men pulled her upright. Senator Mitchell was shouting about lawsuits and criminal negligence, his face purple with rage and fear. Through it all, Raymond held Laura close, her small body pressed against his chest. He could feel her heart hammering like a trapped bird's. Mr. Raymond, she whispered urgently into his ear. The fire's not real. He pulled back slightly to look at her. What? I mean, there's smoke, but... She pointed toward the service door. Real fires grow. Get bigger and hotter. But that smoke, it's not getting worse. It's just staying the same. Raymond studied the smoke more carefully. Laura was right. It had been several minutes since the alarm started, yet the amount of smoke hadn't increased. If there were a genuine fire, they'd be seeing flames by now, feeling heat, watching it spread. This was controlled. Deliberate. It's a distraction, Raymond breathed. Someone set this to create chaos. So they could escape, Laura finished. The woman Miss Sandra is scared of, she's using the fire to get away. Raymond's mind raced. If the poisoner was using this moment to flee, they had seconds to act. But in this chaos, how could they possibly identify one person among 200 panicking guests? His eyes swept the crowd, looking for someone moving against the flow. Everyone was pushing toward the exits, desperate to escape the imagined inferno. Everyone except there, near the eastern wall, a figure in a dark dress, moving perpendicular to the crowd's surge. Not toward the exits, but toward the service corridors. Walking with purpose, not panic. And in her hand, something small and metallic caught the light. A phone. She was texting. There. Raymond pointed, but his voice was lost in the noise. He pushed forward, still carrying Laura, trying to reach his bodyguard through the chaos. Before he could make it 3 steps, a hand grabbed his arm. He spun, ready to fight, and found himself face to face with Franklin Hale. Franklin's silver hair was disheveled for the first time all night, his perfectly knotted tie askew. But his eyes were sharp, calculating, taking in the smoke and chaos with the analytical precision that had made him Raymond's most trusted advisor. Convenient timing for a fire, don't you think? Franklin said, his cultured southern drawl cutting through the noise. Despite the confusion around them, he seemed almost amused. Almost as if someone planned it. "Let go of me," Raymond said coldly, trying to pull away. Security was supposed to be holding Franklin, but in the chaos, the guards had been pulled away to manage the evacuation. Franklin was free, at least for the moment. "In a moment," Franklin replied, his grip tightening. "First, you need to understand something, Raymond. You're looking for the wrong person. I don't have time for your games." "It's not a game," Franklin said, and for the first time, Raymond heard something like urgency in his voice. "You think I'm the mastermind here? You think I orchestrated all of this?" He laughed bitterly. "I'm just a pawn, Raymond. A well-compensated, resentful pawn, but a pawn nonetheless." Raymond stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "The woman you're looking for, the one Sandra's terrified of, she's the one who brought me into this. Who convinced me that your empire should be mine? Who provided the poison, the plan, the—" Franklin's eyes tracked toward the figure near the eastern wall. "The contingencies. Who is she?" Raymond demanded. But Franklin wasn't looking at him anymore. His eyes had fixed on something, or someone, in the crowd. And his carefully maintained composure finally cracked, revealing the fear beneath. "God help us all," Franklin whispered. "She's here. She's watching. She knows I'm talking to you." "Franklin, who?" A sharp crack split the air. For a moment, Raymond didn't understand what had happened. Then Franklin's grip on his arm loosened, and the older man staggered backward. A red stain was spreading across his white shirt, just below his left shoulder. Someone had shot him. Screams erupted. The controlled evacuation dissolved into complete chaos. People dropped to the floor, crawled under tables, pushed and shoved in blind panic. Raymond instinctively turned away, using his body to shield Laura from whatever danger was coming. "Stay down." His bodyguard appeared from nowhere, weapon drawn, eyes scanning for the shooter. "Sir, get behind me. Now." But Raymond was frozen, watching Franklin sink to his knees. The banker's hand pressed against his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. His eyes found Raymond's, and in them was something Raymond had never seen before, genuine regret. "I'm sorry," Franklin mouthed, though no sound came out. Then he collapsed forward onto the marble floor. Security descended immediately, some attending to Franklin, others forming a protective barrier around Raymond. But through the bodies and chaos, Raymond caught glimpses of the crowd, and realized with horror that he couldn't see the woman in the dark dress anymore. She'd vanished in the confusion. "We need to evacuate now," the bodyguard insisted. "Shots fired means active threat. We're getting you out of here." "No," Raymond said, his voice hard. "We're not running. Not until we find who did this." "Sir, with all respect." "Someone just shot Franklin to keep him from talking," Raymond interrupted. "Which means whoever's behind this is desperate enough to kill in front of hundreds of witnesses. If we evacuate, she escapes. And then what? She tries again next week? Next month?" He looked down at Laura, still protected in his arms. "This ends tonight." His bodyguard's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Then we secure the area first. No one leaves until we find the shooter. He barked into his radio. Code red. Shots fired. Seal all exits. I repeat, seal all exits. Nobody moves. As security forces fanned out, Raymond carefully set Laura down behind an overturned table. Stay here, okay? Stay low and stay hidden. But Mr. Raymond. Please. He squeezed her small shoulder. You've been so brave tonight. But I need you safe. Can you do that for me? Laura nodded reluctantly, her eyes wide with fear. Raymond hated leaving her, but he couldn't risk her getting hurt in whatever was about to happen. He moved toward where Franklin lay, now surrounded by security and a guest who'd identified herself as a doctor. She was applying pressure to the wound, her evening gown already stained with blood. How bad? Raymond asked quietly. He'll live, the doctor said grimly. The bullet went through clean. Missed the major arteries. He's in shock, but stable. Franklin's eyes fluttered open. They found Raymond, unfocused but aware. His lips moved, forming words too quiet to hear over the continuing alarm. Raymond knelt down, leaning close. What? What are you trying to say? Watch. Franklin's voice was barely a whisper. Watch with broken clasp. The words triggered something in Raymond's memory. Laura's observation. The man who'd bribed Pascal wore a silver watch with a broken clasp. Franklin wore gold. But someone else. Who, Franklin? Who has the broken watch? But Franklin's eyes had closed again, consciousness slipping away. The doctor waved Raymond back. I need space to work. Please. Raymond stood, his mind racing. A silver watch with a broken clasp. A woman desperate enough to shoot Franklin in front of everyone. Someone with access to the marked bottles. Someone who could move through the gala without raising suspicion. His eyes swept the crowd, now being corralled into groups by security. So many people. So many potential suspects. How could they possibly? Mr. Raymond. Laura's voice cut through his thoughts. She'd emerged from behind the table despite his instructions, her small form darting between security guards. She was pointing at someone. There. The watch. I see it. Raymond followed her finger. In the crowd near the windows, held with the other guests, stood a woman in her 50s. Elegant, composed, wearing a dark blue dress that would have been unremarkable if not for one detail. The silver watch on her left wrist, its clasp visibly damaged, held together with what looked like a safety pin. And Raymond recognized her. Elena Morrison. His director of operations. The woman who'd been with his company for 12 years. Who managed his schedules, organized his events, knew every detail of his business and personal life. Who'd been in this building for hours before the gala started, overseeing preparations. Who had access to everything. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Not Franklin. Not Sandra. Not really. They'd been part of it, yes, but Elena had been the architect. The one who'd planned every detail, who'd known exactly which wines would be served and when, who'd had the access and authority to poison them without raising suspicion. Elena must have felt his stare because her eyes met his across the room. For a moment, they just looked at each other, employer and employee, victim and would-be killer. Then Elena smiled. It was a terrible smile, filled with knowledge and contempt. And then she moved. It happened so fast that even trained security couldn't react immediately. Elena's hand darted into her evening bag, emerging with something small and dark. For a heart-stopping moment, Raymond thought it was another gun. But it was worse. A detonator. Everyone down, someone screamed. But Elena didn't press the button. She held it up, displayed it for everyone to see, her thumb hovering over the trigger. No one moves, Elena said, her voice carrying across the now silent hall. The fire alarm had finally been shut off, and in the sudden quiet, her words dropped like stones into still water. No one comes closer. Or I press this button and we all die together. Security froze. Guns were trained on her, but no one fired. The math was simple. If she had a dead man switch, shooting her would detonate whatever she'd planted. If the bomb was real, and given tonight's events, everyone believed it was, they were all trapped. Raymond's heart hammered. His eyes darted around, searching for Laura. He found her crouched behind his bodyguard, her small face pale with fear but her eyes sharp, still observing, still processing everything. "Elena," Raymond said, keeping his voice level despite the terror coursing through him. "What do you want?" Elena's laugh was bitter. "What do I want? After 12 years of serving you? After building your empire with my bare hands while you took credit for every success and blamed me for every failure?" Her thumb twitched closer to the button. "I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything. I want you to feel as powerless as you've made everyone around you feel. I want—" "You want him to hurt," Laura's small voice interrupted. Every eye turned to the child. She'd stepped out from behind the bodyguard, standing in the open despite Raymond's frantic gesture for her to get back. "Like he hurt you." Elena's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her features. What would a child know about it? "I know about being invisible," Laura said simply. "About working really hard and nobody seeing. About being hungry and scared and having nobody care." She took a small step forward. "My mama works so hard. Cleans offices every night. Comes home with her hands all red and sore. And people don't even say thank you. They just leave more mess for her to clean." Something in Elena's face softened almost imperceptibly. "Your mother is a cleaner?" "Yes, ma'am," Laura said. "And she's the best mama in the world. Even though people don't see her. Even though they treat her like she's nobody." Another small step. "Is that how Mr. Raymond made you feel? Like you were nobody?" Elena's eyes glistened. "He gave me a Christmas bonus once. An envelope with a check and a card that said, 'To Elena, for all your hard work this year.' He spelled my name wrong. After 12 years, he didn't even know how to spell my name." The detail was so small, so specific, that it carried the weight of truth. Raymond felt shame burn through him. He didn't even remember the incident, which somehow made it worse. How many other small cruelties had he committed through simple indifference? "That's really mean," Laura said, her voice sympathetic. "You should feel bad and angry about that." "I do," Elena whispered. "But—" Laura paused, seeming to consider her words carefully. "But blowing everyone up won't make you feel better. It'll just make lots of other people feel the way you do. Lots of other mamas and daddies won't come home. Lots of other little kids will be alone." "They'll survive," Elena said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Will they?" Laura asked. "Or will they just hurt the way you hurt? And then maybe someday they'll want to hurt other people too, and it just keeps going, and nobody ever feels better." The logic was so simple, so clear, coming from a 6-year-old child. The room held its breath, waiting to see if it would be enough. Elena's thumb trembled over the button. Tears streaked down her face, ruining carefully applied makeup. "He deserves to pay," she said, but it sounded like a question now. "Maybe," Laura agreed. "But do all these other people deserve to pay too? Did my mama deserve to pay when you put poison in the wine, and she might have cleaned up here tomorrow and found Mr. Raymond dead and had to live with that picture in her head forever?" Elena's face crumpled. The detonator wavered in her hand. "I'm sorry," Raymond said, his voice breaking. He meant it to be a strategic move, but realized with surprise that he genuinely meant it. "Elena, I'm sorry. I was blind. Selfish. I used people and didn't see them as human beings. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But these people," he gestured around the room, "they don't deserve to die for my sins." Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then her eyes moved to Laura, who stood small and vulnerable in the center of the hall, unarmed except for her simple truth. "You're a brave little girl," Elena said softly. "Thank you, ma'am," Laura replied. "Are you going to let us go home?" Elena's hand slowly lowered. The detonator came away from the button. Security started to move, but Raymond's bodyguard raised a hand, stopping them. Everyone watched as Elena stared at the device in her hand, then carefully, deliberately, set it on the floor. "It's not even real," she said dully. "The bomb. It's just a garage door opener. I knew I couldn't get a real detonator through security. She laughed bitterly. "I just wanted someone to finally take me seriously." Security swarmed her immediately, weapons drawn, hands forcing her to the ground. Elena didn't resist. She just lay there on the expensive marble, surrounded by the opulence she'd helped create, and wept. Raymond moved to Laura, scooping her into his arms. She was trembling now, the adrenaline finally wearing off, replaced by the natural fear of a child who just faced down a potential bomber. "You did so good," Raymond whispered into her hair. So good. "You saved everyone, Laura. Again." "Is it over now?" Laura asked, her voice very small. Raymond looked around the hall. Franklin being loaded onto a stretcher. Sandra in handcuffs, her perfect facade completely destroyed. Elena face down on the floor, her 12 years of resentment finally exposed. And everywhere, the wreckage of his 39th birthday gala, broken glass, spilled wine, and the shattered illusions of the life he'd built. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I think it's finally over." But as medical personnel rushed in and police began processing the scene, as journalists documented everything and guests gave statements, Raymond held Laura close and realized something profound. This ending was also a beginning. A chance to rebuild not just his empire, but himself. To finally see the people around him, to value them, to be worthy of the trust they placed in him. He'd been given a second chance at life tonight. Thanks to a 6-year-old girl in a faded dress, who'd shown more courage than anyone he'd ever known. He wouldn't waste it. The police had arrived in force, a dozen squad cars with lights painting the Manhattan Foundation Hall in alternating red and blue. Detectives moved through the crowd taking statements, while uniformed officers secured the scene. Medical personnel attended to Franklin, now stabilized and conscious enough to curse Raymond with every breath as they loaded him onto a gurney. "You self-righteous bastard." Franklin spat, his cultured accent dissolving into raw vitriol. "You think this is over? You think catching me changes anything?" He struggled against the restraints, his silver hair wild, blood staining his expensive shirt. "There are dozens like me, Raymond. Dozens of people you've stepped on, dismissed, exploited. You can't arrest them all." Security forced him onto the stretcher, but Franklin continued screaming as they wheeled him toward the exit. "You built your empire on our backs. On our ideas, our labor, our sacrifices. And when we're used up, you discard us like..." His words were cut off as the ambulance doors closed. The sudden silence was almost worse than the shouting. Because in that silence, everyone in the hall heard the truth underneath Franklin's rage. He wasn't wrong about everything. Maybe his methods were monstrous, but his grievances? Those were real. Raymond felt hundreds of eyes on him, some sympathetic, most calculating. How many other people in this room felt the way Franklin did? How many smiled to his face while nursing similar resentments? Near the bar, Sandra was being processed by a female detective. She'd gone quiet, all the fight drained out of her. Her perfect hair hung limp, her makeup smeared, her designer gown wrinkled and stained. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd gambled everything on someone else's murder and lost. Elena sat handcuffed on a velvet chair, 2 officers flanking her. She stared at nothing, her face empty of expression. The fake detonator sat in an evidence bag nearby, a garage door opener, just as she'd said. A prop for a desperate woman's final performance. Around the hall, guests clustered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. The journalists had been corralled into one corner but still managed to take photos, document every detail, capture the fall of Raymond Jones for tomorrow's headlines. This gala would be remembered, but not for the reasons Raymond had intended. "Sir." His bodyguard approached, looking exhausted. "The police want your statement. They need you to walk them through everything from the beginning." Raymond nodded wearily. "Give me a minute." The bodyguard hesitated. "Sir, there's something else. The sommelier, Pascal, his daughter is secure. The team got her out without incident. But..." He paused. "He's asking to see you. Says he needs to apologize in person." "Tell him," Raymond started, then stopped. "No more dismissing people. No more sending messages through intermediaries. Tell him I'll come to him. When the police are done with me, I'll come." The bodyguard looked surprised but nodded and moved away. Raymond felt a small hand slip into his. Laura stood beside him, so quiet he hadn't noticed her approach. She'd been unusually silent since Elena's surrender, her typical sharp observations replaced by thoughtful contemplation. "You okay?" Raymond asked, kneeling down to her level. Laura nodded slowly. Are you? I don't know, Raymond admitted. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my friendships, my success, it's all. He gestured vaguely at the chaos around them. It's all different than I thought. That's good, Laura said simply. Sometimes we gotta see things different before we can make them better. The wisdom from such a young child made Raymond's chest ache. Where did you learn to be so smart? My mama, Laura said. And from watching people. When you don't have much, you gotta pay attention. See what's real and what's pretend. Raymond studied her small face, the intelligence in those dark eyes, the strength in that small frame. Laura, I want to help you and your mother. Make sure you have what you need. A safe place to live, good food, your mother doesn't have to work herself to exhaustion anymore. Would that be okay? Laura's eyes widened. Really? Really? You saved my life. Multiple times. That deserves more than just thank you. For the first time all night, Laura smiled, a real genuine child smile that lit up her whole face. Mama's gonna cry. She always cries when good things happen. Then I'll bring tissues, Raymond said, smiling back. And Laura? I want you to know. But he never finished the sentence. Because Laura's smile suddenly vanished, her expression shifting to something Raymond had learned to recognize, alertness bordering on alarm. Mr. Raymond, she whispered, her hand tightening around his. Something's wrong. Raymond's heart began to race. What? What is it? Laura's eyes scanned the room, moving from face to face, group to group. The guests were beginning to relax now that the three conspirators had been caught. Nervous laughter punctuated conversations. Someone had requested champagne, real champagne this time, nothing marked. The tension was easing, replaced by the strange euphoria that comes after surviving danger. But Laura wasn't relaxed. Her small body was tense as a drawn bowstring. Laura. Raymond pressed. What do you see? It's what I don't see, she said quietly. When Miss Elena was talking, when she was holding that button thing, everyone was scared. Really scared. Their faces, their eyes, everything. That's natural. We all thought she might blow up the building. But one person wasn't scared enough, Laura continued, her voice barely audible. They were scared of getting caught. Not scared of dying. Scared of us figuring something out. Ice water ran through Raymond's veins. Who? Which person? Laura's eyes stopped on a figure near the eastern windows. A woman in an elegant burgundy gown, speaking with a detective, her posture perfect, her expression concerned and helpful. She was nodding along with the detective's questions, offering details, being the perfect witness. Her, Laura whispered. Miss Victoria. Victoria Chun. Raymond's vice president of acquisitions. A woman who'd been with the company for 8 years. Who'd helped negotiate some of his most profitable deals. Who'd been invited to this gala as one of his inner circle. That's impossible, Raymond said automatically. Victoria's been loyal since the day I hired her. She's pretending, Laura interrupted. Like Miss Sandra was pretending. Like Mr. Franklin was pretending. Her eyes met his. But better at it. Raymond wanted to dismiss it. Wanted to believe that Laura was just exhausted, traumatized, seeing threats where none existed. But she'd been right about everything else. Every single observation, every warning, every suspicion had proven true. What makes you think she's involved? He asked quietly. Laura bit her lip, thinking. When the smoke started, when everyone was running, she wasn't running toward the doors like everyone else. She was moving toward the kitchen. Like she needed to check on something. Make sure something was working right. The fire, Raymond breathed. You think she set it? Not set it. But maybe knew about it. Made sure it would happen at the right time. Laura's small face scrunched with concentration. And when the gun went bang, when Mr. Franklin got shot, everyone ducked or screamed or ran. But she just. Laura demonstrated, tilting her head slightly to the side, her expression neutral. Like she was watching something she already knew was going to happen. Raymond's mind raced back through the evening. Victoria had been here from the start, hadn't she? Helping with preparations, greeting guests, being the perfect corporate executive. She'd expressed concern when the dog died, horror when the poison was revealed, shock when Franklin was exposed. But had any of it been genuine? Or had Victoria Chun been performing the whole time, playing her part in an elaborate scheme? "There's something else," Laura said, and now her voice carried real fear. "When Miss Elena was crying, when she put down the button thing, Miss Victoria looked disappointed. Only for a second, but I saw it. Like she wanted Miss Elena to press it. Like she wanted everyone to die." The implications were staggering. If Laura was right, and God help him, she'd been right about everything else, then they hadn't caught all the conspirators. They'd caught the ones who'd failed, the ones who'd cracked under pressure, the ones whose emotions had made them sloppy. But Victoria? Victoria was still standing. Still smiling. Still free. "Mr. Raymond," Laura whispered urgently. "I think we should tell someone. Tell the police or your security man or—" "Tell them what?" Raymond interrupted, his voice low. "That a 6-year-old has a feeling about someone? We need proof, Laura. Actual evidence, not just observations." But even as he said it, his eyes were tracking Victoria. She'd finished with the detective and was now moving through the crowd with practiced grace. Comforting shaken guests, exchanging quiet words, being the steady presence that everyone needed in crisis. And as Raymond watched, Victoria's path brought her closer to where Sandra sat under guard. The two women's eyes met, just for a fraction of a second. Sandra's face drained of color. Her mouth opened as if to speak. But Victoria's expression didn't change. Just a slight shake of her head, barely perceptible. A warning. Sandra's mouth closed. She looked down at her handcuffed wrists, her whole body trembling. "She's threatening her," Laura breathed. "Miss Victoria just told Miss Sandra to stay quiet." Raymond felt like he was seeing double, one image of Victoria Chun, trusted executive and loyal employee, overlaid with another, Victoria Chun, puppet master, the one who'd orchestrated everything while letting others take the fall. Franklin hadn't been the mastermind. He'd been a tool. And so had Sandra and Elena, all of them used, manipulated, set up to be caught while the Real architect walked free. "We need to be very careful," Raymond said quietly to Laura. "If you're right about this." "I am right," Laura said with absolute certainty. "I know how mean people look. How they hide it. She's hiding something really, really bad." Raymond's bodyguard was approaching again, but Raymond waved him off. Think. He needed to think. If Victoria was truly involved, she'd have covered her tracks perfectly. The poison had no link to her. The bribes were paid by Franklin. The threats were made by Elena. Victoria's hands were clean. Unless... "The watch," Raymond said suddenly. "Laura, you said the person who bribed Pascal wore a silver watch with a broken clasp." "Yes, sir." Elena wore a silver watch. He'd seen it clearly when she'd held up the fake detonator. "But so does Miss Victoria," Laura said, pointing discreetly. Raymond's eyes went to Victoria's left wrist. Sure enough, a sleek silver watch with a distinctive damaged clasp held together with what looked like clear tape. "Two people," Raymond breathed. "There were two people with broken watches." "Or," Laura said slowly, "one person wearing someone else's watch." The pieces clicked together. Elena had worn a silver watch tonight. But what if it wasn't hers? What if Victoria had given it to her, knowing that if anyone noticed the distinctive broken clasp, suspicion would fall on Elena instead of Victoria? "It's like a shell game," Laura explained. "My mama showed me once. You move things around so people look at the wrong place. Miss Victoria made everyone look at Miss Elena and Mr. Franklin and Miss Sandra. But she was the one moving everything the whole time." Raymond felt sick. How deep did this go? How long had Victoria been planning this? And why? What had he done to earn such calculated, patient hatred? "Sir." His bodyguard had returned, insistent now. "The police are waiting. They need your statement." "In a moment," Raymond said, still watching Victoria. She'd moved to the far side of the hall now, near one of the exits that was finally being unsealed. Coincidence? Or strategic positioning? "She's gonna leave," Laura said urgently. "When the doors open, she's gonna walk out with everyone else, and you'll never prove anything." She was right. Once Victoria left this building, once she had time to destroy evidence and build alibis, They'd never touch her. She was too smart, too careful, too patient. She'd disappear into her normal life, her corporate position, her perfect reputation. And someday, when the heat had died down, she'd try again. Because people like Victoria, people who could orchestrate attempted murder with such cold precision, didn't give up just because one plan failed. Raymond made a decision. He stood, keeping Laura's hand firmly in his, and walked directly toward Victoria. His bodyguard tensed but followed, hand near his weapon. Victoria saw him coming. Her professional smile appeared, warm and concerned. "Raymond, thank God you're all right. This whole night has been such a nightmare. I can't believe Franklin and Elena would." "Victoria," Raymond interrupted quietly. "We need to talk. Privately." Something flickered in her eyes, too quick to identify. "Of course. Although I really should be giving my statement to the police. I saw quite a bit tonight, and I want to make sure they have all the information they need to." "I'm sure you do," Raymond said. "But this will only take a moment. Please." For a heartbeat, Victoria's mask slipped. Raymond saw calculation in her eyes, measuring angles, considering options. Then the professional smile returned, bright and false. "All right," she said. "Just for a moment." Raymond guided her toward a quiet alcove, away from the main crowd. His bodyguard positioned himself to block anyone's view while staying close enough to intervene if needed. Laura pressed against Raymond's side, her small hand gripping his jacket. "What's this about?" Victoria asked, her tone suggesting polite confusion. "Your watch," Raymond said simply. "The one you gave Elena to wear tonight." Victoria's expression didn't change, but her right hand moved almost imperceptibly toward her left wrist, a protective gesture she caught and stopped. "I don't know what you mean." "The broken clasp," Raymond continued. "Very distinctive. Laura here saw it on the person who bribed Pascal. Elena wore it tonight. But it's not Elena's watch, is it? It's yours." "That's ridiculous," Victoria said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. "Even if I owned a watch like that, which I don't, how would that prove anything?" "It wouldn't," Raymond admitted. "Not by itself. But combined with Laura's observation that you moved toward the kitchen when the fire started, like you knew what was happening, and your expression when Franklin was shot, like you'd expected it, and the way you just threatened Sandra with a look to keep her quiet." He paused. "It starts to paint a picture." "A picture painted by a frightened child's imagination," Victoria said, her voice hardening. "You're really going to destroy my career, my reputation, based on the fantasies of a street urchin?" "Don't call her that," Raymond said quietly, but with steel underneath. Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Oh, this is rich." The great Raymond Jones, suddenly discovering compassion. "Tell me, Raymond, did you feel compassion when you fired 30 people last year to boost quarterly earnings? Did you feel sympathy when you bought out my first company and dismantled it for parts, destroying everything I'd built?" Raymond's breath caught. "Your company?" "Chen Technologies," Victoria spat. 8 years ago. Before you hired me, before I became your loyal little VP. You gutted my startup, sold off the patents, and scattered my employees to the wind. Then you offered me a job, a pity job, like you were doing me a favor." The memory came flooding back. Chen Technologies. A small AI firm with promising patents but cash flow problems. Raymond had acquired it for pennies on the dollar, absorbed what he wanted, and shut down the rest. Standard business practice. He'd barely thought about it since. "I didn't know," Raymond said quietly. "I didn't realize." "You never realize," Victoria interrupted. "That's your problem, Raymond. You never see the people you destroy. You just see opportunities, acquisitions, strategic advantages." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I've waited 8 years. Worked beside you, smiled at your jokes, applauded your speeches. And every single day, I planned how to take everything from you the way you took everything from me." "So you used Franklin and Elena," Raymond said. "Made them believe they were the masterminds while you pulled the strings." "They were so easy to manipulate," Victoria said, and now her professional mask was completely gone, revealing cold fury underneath. Franklin with his wounded ego, Elena with her ignored grievances, Sandra with her greed. All I had to do was whisper the right words, plant the right seeds, and they did exactly what I needed them to do. And when they failed? Laura asked, her small voice surprisingly steady. When I stopped Mr. Raymond from drinking the poison? What were you gonna do then? Victoria's eyes moved to Laura, and Raymond saw something in that gaze that made his blood run cold. Calculation. The look of someone deciding if a problem needed to be eliminated. I would have found another way, Victoria said softly. Another plan. Another opportunity. Because I'm patient, Laura. And patient people always win in the end. Not this time, Raymond's bodyguard said, stepping forward. His phone was in his hand, screen illuminated. This conversation has been recorded. Every word. And it's already been sent to the detective in charge. Victoria's face went blank with shock. You can't. We can and we did, the bodyguard said grimly. You're under arrest, Ms. Chun. For conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and about a dozen other charges the lawyers will sort out. As security moved in to restrain her, Victoria's composure finally shattered completely. She didn't scream or fight like Franklin had. Instead she laughed, a sound so empty and broken that it made everyone nearby flinch. 8 years, she said, still laughing as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. 8 years of planning, and I'm brought down by a child in a torn dress and a bodyguard with a smartphone. Her eyes found Raymond's. But here's the thing, Raymond, I'm not the only one. There are others. People you've stepped on, businesses you've destroyed, lives you've ruined without ever noticing. Her smile was terrible. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering which one will be the next to come for you. Then she was being led away, her burgundy gown swishing across the marble, her perfect posture maintained even in defeat. The guests who'd witnessed the arrest stood in stunned silence. Then, slowly, murmurs began. Whispers spreading like wildfire. Another conspirator. Another betrayal. How deep did Raymond Jones's enemies go? Raymond felt Laura's small hand squeeze his. Mr. Raymond? Are you okay? Was he? Raymond looked around the Manhattan Foundation Hall, his grand celebration, now the scene of multiple assassination attempts and betrayals. He looked at the guests watching him with a mixture of pity and suspicion. He looked at the journalists documenting his downfall. He looked at everything he'd built, and saw it all through new eyes. No, he said honestly. But I'm alive. Thanks to you. Laura leaned against his side, and Raymond put his arm around her small shoulders. In this room full of expensive gowns and tailored tuxedos, this child in her faded dress was the only person he truly trusted. The only one who'd seen him clearly and chosen to save him anyway. The detective approached, ready to take Raymond's statement. The police needed answers. The press wanted quotes. His lawyers would be calling any moment. The empire he'd built was shaking on its foundation, and tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, new reckonings. But tonight, right now, Raymond stood in the center of the glittering hall with Laura at his side, and made a promise to himself. He would learn. He would change. He would see people instead of opportunities, humanity instead of assets. He would be better. Because if a 6-year-old child could show such courage, such wisdom, such grace, then a 39-year-old billionaire had no excuse for anything less. The grand hall still glittered, but now the light seemed different, less like celebration, more like exposure. Every face a potential enemy. Every smile possibly false. Every handshake potentially treacherous. But at his side stood Laura, the child he'd once dismissed, now his only true ally in a world that suddenly seemed far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. And together, they would face whatever came next.
Wow, thank you so much for watching. Seriously, your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this video, the biggest way you can show me love and encourage me to keep creating is to hit that like button and subscribe. Takes 1 second, but it makes a huge difference. Speaking of more videos, I've got another exciting one lined up for you. Just click on the next video showing right on your screen now to keep the fun going. See you there.